The ocean is a mirror of eternity. Its waves rise and fall like the breathing of the earth itself, concealing mysteries that may never surface. For millennia, sailors, poets, and philosophers have looked toward its endless horizon and wondered what lies beyond. But somewhere, buried in both water and memory, rests one of the greatest enigmas of all, the Legend of Atlantis. The story begins not in the depths of the sea, but in the quiet chambers of ancient Athens. In the 4th century BCE, the philosopher Plato wrote 2 dialogues, Timaeus and Critias. Within their carefully crafted lines, he recorded the tale of a mighty island empire that had flourished 9,000 years earlier. According to his account, Atlantis lay beyond the Pillars of Heracles, what we know today as the Strait of Gibraltar. It was said to be a land of great wealth and power, adorned with temples of gold and silver, where kings ruled over concentric rings of city and sea. A place where technology, artistry, and ambition soared higher than any known in his age. But Plato's tale was more than a celebration. It was a warning. For Atlantis, despite all its wonders, grew arrogant. Its rulers sought dominion beyond their shores. In time, divine punishment fell upon them. The island, once radiant, was swallowed in a single day and night of catastrophe, vanishing beneath the waves. So Plato tells us. For centuries, scholars debated, was this history or allegory? Plato was no mere storyteller. His writings often concealed layers of meaning. Some insist Atlantis was simply a parable, a mirror held up to Athens itself, reminding his fellow citizens of the dangers of pride and corruption. Others suggest the philosopher was preserving fragments of an older memory, passed down through Egyptian priests and then through Solon, the Athenian lawgiver who visited their temples. Plato himself declared that the story was true. Yet, as generations passed, skepticism grew. No island empire, no golden city, no sunken ruins could be found. Historians folded Atlantis into the realm of myth, alongside the labyrinth of Minos and the garden of the Hesperides. Still, questions remained. Why would Plato choose to set his lesson in such vivid detail? Why describe its geography, its rulers, its very dimensions, with such precision, unless he was drawing upon a source older than himself? Some historians argue that Plato, meticulous as he was, would not have invented the story whole cloth. He may have shaped it, yes, but around a core of truth. Meanwhile, whispers spread through time. The story of a drowned land echoed across cultures, far beyond Greece. Could it be that Plato's account was not isolated, but part of a tapestry of memory that humanity carried from a forgotten age? This is the riddle that has kept Atlantis alive in the human imagination. Odd facts emerge from history. When the Spanish first crossed the Atlantic, they heard from Caribbean peoples of a great island destroyed by the sea. When explorers mapped the coasts of Africa and Europe, they noted strange ruins and megaliths whose purpose was lost to time. And long before Plato, Egyptian priests spoke of a warlike power that had challenged their ancestors. To some, these fragments suggest not invention, but memory. Mainstream scholarship continues to place Atlantis in the realm of allegory. Yet outside the academy, the legend has grown into something more. Poets, mystics, and seekers of lost worlds found in Plato's words a door to speculation. Perhaps Atlantis was not a moral tale, but the record of a catastrophe so great that even the ancients could scarcely describe it. Imagine, then, the possibility that somewhere in the ocean's abyss, beneath miles of water and centuries of silt, lies the skeletal remains of a city that once lit the world. That Plato's voice was not the beginning of the story, but only the echo of something far older. The legend has never died. Each century revives it in new forms, in new contexts, in new questions. And so we begin with Plato, not because he created Atlantis, but because he preserved it. His story lingers like a haunting refrain, inviting us to ask not only whether Atlantis once was, but whether it still might be. the ocean holds its silence. But as we step further into this journey, we will follow that echo into deeper waters, into myths of floods and fires, into ruins that whisper of forgotten worlds, and into the shadows of possibility where fact and mystery intertwine. The sea does not forget. Its tides roll endlessly, erasing footprints from the shore, yet preserving in its depths the bones of vanished worlds. Across cultures and continents, humanity has carried within memory a haunting refrain, the tale of a flood, sudden and merciless, that reshaped everything. Centuries before Plato spoke of Atlantis, the scribes of Mesopotamia etched another story in clay. On tablets buried beneath the sands of Nineveh, the Epic of Gilgamesh tells of Utnapishtim, warned by the gods of a great deluge. He builds a vast vessel, gathers life within it, and survives the waters that swallow the land. The echoes are unmistakable. Generations later, the Hebrews told a parallel tale, the Ark of Noah, the cleansing waters, the rebirth of humanity. Yet these stories are not confined to the lands between the Tigris and the Jordan. In India, the ancient Shatapatha Brahmana describes Manu, a man warned by a divine fish of a cosmic flood. He ties his vessel to the horn of that fish and survives as waters engulf the earth. In the Americas, the Hopi speak of floods sent to wash away corruption, sparing only those guided to safety. The Inca remembered Viracocha, a great creator god, who once sent a deluge to humble the first race of men. Even in distant China, tales of the Great Yu describe a world ravaged by waters, where a hero labors to tame the flood and restore balance. How can it be that across so many horizons, in voices separated by oceans, the same story rises again and again? Was it coincidence, born from the universal fear of drowning? Or was it memory and echo passed down through countless generations, preserving fragments of a real catastrophe? Science offers its perspective. At the end of the last ice age, around 12,000 years ago, the Earth began to warm. Vast glaciers melted, seas rose by more than 400 feet, swallowing coastlines, islands, and river valleys. Entire worlds where humans once hunted, fished, and built their first settlements vanished beneath the waves. What today are continental shelves or once fertile plains? The Black Sea, once a freshwater lake, may have been violently flooded by the Mediterranean in a sudden breach, an event some scholars link to Near Eastern flood legends. Meanwhile, in the far north, legends of sudden destruction mirror geological evidence. The Greenland ice cores reveal a sharp, abrupt shift in climate. The Younger Dryas, a time when temperatures plummeted, then rose with ferocity. Such instability could have triggered floods, storms, and chaos across early human communities, searing memories into myth. But myths are more than geology. They are carried in song and ceremony, remembered not as numbers or charts, but as living warnings. When Polynesian navigators told of islands swallowed by the sea, they were not describing allegory. They were preserving ancestral memory of lands that truly vanished. When the Ojibwe spoke of floods reshaping the world, they were encoding in story what science now reveals in stone and ice. Odd fragments emerge. In Doggerland, the vast plain that once linked Britain to Europe, archaeologists have dredged up bones and tools from beneath the North Sea. A whole world, now drowned, was once home to thousands. Is it any wonder that their descendants remembered the sea as a thief of worlds? The universality of flood myths is striking. Unlike isolated tales of heroes or gods, these stories span almost every culture. Each tells of a humanity humbled, of waters unstoppable, of survival by a chosen few. Plato's Atlantis fits into this chorus, not as an isolated fantasy, but as part of a larger song of remembrance. Perhaps Atlantis is not unique, but one face of a greater truth, that civilizations can rise, flourish, and be swept away in an instant. Imagine for a moment the first people to watch the sea advance upon their homes. The sound of waves not as comfort, but as terror. the earth beneath them trembling, the horizon shifting, the familiar swallowed by salt and foam. How would such a moment be remembered? Not as geology, but as myth stories repeated by firelight, etched into ritual, carried across millennia until they reached us today. Some researchers argue that these parallels are mere archetypes, themes born from the human psyche. Water cleanses. Water destroys. Water gives life. But the precision of certain accounts, the Ark, the chosen survivors, the rebirth of humanity, suggests something deeper. Perhaps, as with Plato, fragments of true events were woven into symbolic form, preserving memory long after the details faded. As the floodwaters of myth recede, what remains is haunting, a shared sense of fragility, that no matter how great a people may become, the earth itself holds power to unmake them. This lesson crosses oceans, cultures, and languages, uniting us in a silent remembrance of catastrophe. And so, when Plato spoke of an island that drowned in a single night, he was not speaking into silence. He was adding his voice to an ancient chorus, a world already haunted by memory of waters that destroy and renew. The question lingers. If so many cultures remembered floods, might they also have remembered Atlantis, not as allegory, but as history? Perhaps the drowned empire is not separate from the flood stories, but woven among them, another thread in humanity's tapestry of memory. The ocean remains vast. Its floor hides valleys deeper than the Grand Canyon, mountains taller than the Alps, plains that once held forests and rivers. When we hear of a world drowned in memory, we may not be listening to imagination alone. We may be hearing the faint echo of places that once were coastlines lost, people scattered, cities swallowed whole. And from this memory, Atlantis emerges not as a solitary myth, but as part of humanity's oldest recollection, that the world can change overnight, and that what is may one day be lost to the sea. As the tides recede from these flood-born memories, another story rises of those who searched for Atlantis across the ages. Mystics, explorers, scholars, and dreamers, each chasing the echo of a city they could not forget. And it is to their journey that we now turn. The memory of Atlantis did not die with Plato's pen. Instead, it lingered like a spark, carried forward across centuries, sometimes faint, sometimes blazing into obsession. Through each age, a new kind of seeker rose. Philosophers, mystics, explorers, and scientists. Each convinced that the lost world was more than allegory. Each willing to chase its echo into the shadows of time. In the early centuries of Europe, scholars preserved Plato's texts, but often treated them as allegory. Atlantis was read as moral instruction, a parable about pride and downfall. Yet beyond the academies, the story gripped the imagination. Travelers spoke of islands that appeared on maps and then vanished, of lands glimpsed on the horizon, never reached again. Medieval cartographers filled their atlases with phantom continents, Antilia, High Brazil, and St. Brendan's Isle. Perhaps they whispered, these were fragments of Atlantis, rising briefly from the sea before vanishing again. As the age of discovery dawned, the tale took on new life. When Columbus crossed the Atlantic, some of his companions believed the islands they encountered might be remnants of Atlantis itself. Spanish chroniclers recorded that the peoples of the Caribbean spoke of drowned lands and ancestors who fled from the sea. To Europeans hungry for wonder, these voices seemed to confirm Plato's vision. But the search was never only geographic, it was also mystical. During the Renaissance and Enlightenment, esoteric thinkers placed Atlantis at the center of hidden histories. Some saw it as the cradle of wisdom, the true origin of mathematics, astronomy, and sacred geometry. Secret societies whispered that Atlantean priests carried fragments of knowledge into Egypt, into Mesoamerica, into distant lands. In their view, all civilizations were children of a forgotten parent. The 19th century brought a new figure who would ignite public fascination: Ignatius Donnelly. A congressman from Minnesota, Donnelly was no ordinary politician. He was a visionary who believed that myths concealed forgotten truths. In 1882, he published Atlantis, the Antediluvian World. In its pages, he declared that Atlantis was the mother civilization, the seed of all ancient cultures. Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Maya each, he argued, inherited fragments of Atlantean genius. Donnelly filled his book with comparisons: pyramids on opposite sides of the ocean, flood myths from every culture, technologies too advanced for their time. To him, these were not coincidences, but clues pointing back to a drowned origin. His work captivated readers, spreading the idea of a real Atlantis into popular imagination like never before. Scientists dismissed him, but the public embraced the vision. Atlantis, once a philosophical tale, was reborn as a lost civilization of flesh and stone. The 20th century only deepened the allure. Psychic Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, spoke in trance of Atlantis as a place of advanced technology, crystals of power, flying machines, energy harnessed from the earth itself. He predicted that remnants of Atlantis would rise again in the 20th century, perhaps near the Bahamas. Though his visions were controversial, they fueled waves of speculation, blending mysticism with archaeology, legend with prophecy. Meanwhile, explorers combed the seas for evidence. In 1968, divers off the coast of Bimini in the Bahamas discovered massive stone blocks, aligned in what seemed to be a road or wall. To believers, it was Cayce's prophecy fulfilled, the first stones of Atlantis breaking the surface. To skeptics, it was merely natural limestone shaped by currents. Yet the mystery remained, keeping the legend alive. As technology advanced, so did the search. Sonar mapping, deep-sea dives, and satellite imagery began to peel back the ocean's veil. In 2001, researchers off Cuba reported vast geometric structures a half-mile beneath the waves. Pyramids, roads, and walls seemed to emerge from the darkness. For a moment, the world paused. Was this Atlantis? But follow-up investigations stalled, and official confirmation never came. The mystery dissolved back into silence. Modern oceanographers approached the question with caution. They mapped submerged coastlines, discovering stone tools and traces of human settlement in places now deep underwater. Sites in the Mediterranean, the North Sea, and the Indian Ocean reveal how rising seas erased entire chapters of human history. While few claim these are Atlantis itself, each discovery reminds us that countless worlds once existed where now there is only ocean. Odd facts accumulate. Ancient maps show coastlines uncannily close to what we now know they once were before the Ice Age ended. Legends of islands disappearing are found in Ireland, Polynesia, and the Americas. Fishermen still tell of sunken forests glimpsed at low tide, remnants of lands drowned thousands of years ago. Could these fragments, scattered across the globe, be the fingerprints of a forgotten epoch? The searchers of time are united by a single refusal, the refusal to let Atlantis remain only allegory. For them, the tale is too vivid, too persistent, too universal to be mere invention. Whether through philosophy, mysticism, or science, each has tried to pierce the veil, to find the place where memory and reality meet. And as they search, Atlantis changes shape. For Donnelly, it was the mother of civilizations. For Cayce, it was a realm of advanced energy and spiritual lessons. For oceanographers, it is a symbol of all that remains hidden beneath the waves. Atlantis is not a fixed point, it is a mirror, reflecting the hopes, fears, and knowledge of each age. But always the question lingers: if so many have sought it, why has it never been found? Is it because it never existed? Or is it because the ocean guards its secrets too well? The seekers remind us of one truth: whether Atlantis was real or not, the human heart longs for lost worlds. To imagine that we are not the first to rise, to wonder if greatness once stood where now there is only sea, is to glimpse the fragility of our own age. And as this chorus of searchers fades, another story emerges, one rooted not in visions or speculation, but in real catastrophe. For there is a place where fire and sea collided, erasing a civilization in an instant. A place where history and myth blur together, giving rise to one of the most compelling candidates for Atlantis, the island of Santorini. The Aegean Sea glitters like broken glass beneath the sun. Islands rise from the blue like fragments of a shattered crown, their cliffs steep, their villages whitewashed and clinging to stone. Among them lies one of the most haunting landscapes in all the Mediterranean, Santorini, a crescent of land encircling a vast, flooded caldera. Here, silence carries a memory of fire. Nearly 3,600 years ago, this island was not a ring of broken stone, but a single mountain, towering and fertile. It belonged to a people whose culture radiated across the Mediterranean, the Minoans. Centered in Crete, they were master seafarers, artists, and builders. They painted dolphins on their walls, built palaces filled with light, and wove trade routes that stretched from Egypt to the islands of Greece. Their world was vibrant, confident, seemingly unshakable. But beneath the surface, pressure was building. The volcano known as Thera was stirring. And when it awoke, it unleashed one of the greatest eruptions in recorded history. The mountain tore itself apart. Explosions thundered, ash darkened the skies, and the sea boiled as fire met water. Entire towns were buried in pumice. The eruption blasted more than 60 cubic kilometers of rock into the air, sending tsunamis racing across the Aegean. The sound of collapse must have been like the tearing of the earth itself. For the Minoans, it was not simply disaster, it was apocalypse. Archaeologists have uncovered the remains of a city on Santorini, preserved beneath layers of ash. Streets, houses, frescoes frozen in time, like a Bronze Age Pompeii. The artistry is breathtaking. Murals of lily, monkeys, and ships, painted with such elegance that they seem almost modern. Here was a people of vision, of sophistication, their lives interrupted mid-step by catastrophe. Mainstream historians see in this eruption a likely source for Plato's tale of Atlantis. The timing, though imperfect, is close. The setting and advanced maritime culture, destroyed by sudden disaster, matches the broad strokes. Even the detail of an island swallowed by the sea seems to resonate with the collapse of Thera. Perhaps, they argue, the story of the Minoans was passed down through Egyptian priests, reshaped over centuries, and finally told to Plato as the saga of Atlantis. Yet gaps remain. Plato describes Atlantis as an empire, vast and warlike, stretching beyond the Mediterranean. The Minoans, while powerful, left no evidence of such domination. Their palaces were centers of culture and trade, not fortresses of conquest. And though Thera's eruption was devastating, Crete endured for centuries afterward. The Minoan civilization eventually declined, but not in a single day and night, as Plato wrote. It was erosion, not obliteration. Still, the parallels haunt. Imagine a traveler, centuries later, hearing whispers of an island that vanished in fire and water, of a people swept away by the wrath of the earth. Such a tale, retold and reshaped, could easily grow into the legend of Atlantis. History has a way of becoming myth when seen through the lens of time. Odd details deepen the mystery. Some scholars believe the eruption of Thera was so powerful it altered climate across the globe. Ice cores from Greenland show sudden spikes of ash and sulfate, evidence of volcanic winter. Egyptian records speak of dark skies and famine. Chinese annals describe strange weather, floods, and failed harvests. Could this single eruption have been remembered in fragments across civilizations far beyond the Aegean? Others suggest that tsunamis from the blast swept across Crete, shattering Minoan ports and fleets, crippling their ability to recover. The sea, once their highway of power, became their undoing. If Atlantis was truly a parable of arrogance undone, then here, in the Minoans' fate, lies a real-world reflection of Plato's warning. And yet, something resists closure. The ruins at Akrotiri, the preserved city on Santorini, reveal a society advanced for its time. Multi-storied homes, complex plumbing systems, vibrant art, all lost in a blink. When modern visitors walk those silent streets, they are struck by a strange feeling that the people here were not so different from us. That catastrophe can erase even the brightest cultures in a single heartbeat. But is Santorini Atlantis? Skeptics argue that Plato has timeline 9,000 years before his own era pushes Atlantis into a far deeper past than the Bronze Age. If his numbers were accurate, Atlantis would predate the pyramids, even the rise of agriculture. How then could it be the Minoans? Unless perhaps Plato's dates were mistranslated or his sources exaggerated. The debate continues. Some embrace Thera as the most plausible origin of the Atlantis story, a real event magnified by memory into legend. Others dismiss it as coincidence, insisting that Plato's Atlantis was never meant as history at all. Still others look at Santorini as only a clue, a reminder that civilizations have indeed drowned, and that the possibility of a greater loss remains. Standing at the edge of the caldera today, gazing at the vast hollow filled with sea, one cannot help but wonder. Beneath the rippling waves lies the heart of a mountain that once destroyed a people's world. Above it, villages cling to the cliffs, white against the dark rock, a fragile beauty perched on the scar of disaster. It is a place where history and myth blur, where the memory of Atlantis seems almost to breathe in the air. If Santorini is not Atlantis itself, then it may be something equally profound. Proof that Plato's tale, whether allegory or memory, speaks to a truth of human history. That even the most radiant civilizations can fall. That the sea can erase and fire can silence, leaving only fragments for future ages to wonder over. And so, from the ashes of Thera, the search moves outward. If Atlantis was not here, where else might it have been? The answer may lie not in fire, but in maps that should not exist, charts of coasts and continents known long before their discovery. And with them, the possibility of a world older and stranger than history remembers. Unroll a map. Lines and curves trace the contours of the known world. Coastlines, rivers, islands. For us, maps are a given. Satellites sweep the skies, charting every mountain and inlet in astonishing detail. But imagine standing centuries ago with only compasses, stars, and memory to guide you. How much of the earth could you truly know? This is why certain maps unsettle historians. Because they seem to know too much. Because they suggest a memory older than our history books allow. The most famous of these is the Piri-Reis map, drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral and cartographer named Piri-Reis. It stitched together fragments of earlier charts collected from sailors and libraries. The parchment, now held in Istanbul's Topkapi Palace, depicts the coasts of Europe, North Africa, and most intriguingly, South America. The detail is uncanny. Rivers snake inland, bays curve in recognizable shapes. But what truly captures attention is at the southern edge, a landmass some interpret as Antarctica 3, centuries before its official discovery. Not only that it appears without ice, its coastline free and detailed, as if copied from a source that knew the continent in a different age. How could this be? Mainstream historians offer grounded explanations. Perhaps what looks like Antarctica is merely a distorted continuation of South America, an error of projection and imagination. Cartographers of the time often stretched coastlines to fill the edges of the page. And yet, others insist the accuracy hints at something deeper. Knowledge preserved from an ancient source, inherited through forgotten maps. The mystery grows when we consider other, impossible cartographies. The Orontius Phineas map of 1531 also shows an ice-free Antarctica, with rivers and mountains outlined beneath the polar circle. The Zeno map of 1380 depicts Greenland and parts of North America, long before Columbus. And the Ptolemaic maps of antiquity hint at a world wider than Rome could have known. Taken together, they suggest a riddle. Were early mapmakers tapping into a legacy of geographic knowledge stretching back far beyond their time? Or were these merely coincidences, born of errors, myths, and the tendency to see patterns where none exist? Skeptics remind us, maps are slippery things. The curvature of the Earth, the limitations of projection, the difficulty of scaling, these create distortions. What seems like Antarctica could just as easily be a cartographic illusion, and yet the possibility lingers. Because knowledge is never born in a vacuum. The Ottomans inherited maps from Arabs. The Arabs inherited from Byzantines. The Byzantines from Rome, and Rome from Greece. Beyond Greece lay Egypt, Mesopotamia civilizations whose libraries were said to contain records of lands and peoples long forgotten. Could fragments of those ancient charts have trickled down through hands and centuries, finally reaching Piri Reis's pen? An odd detail in the Piri Reis map fuels speculation. He himself wrote notes on the parchment, stating that his sources came from maps drawn in the time of Alexander the Great. What were these maps? We do not know, they are lost to history. But if true, they reach deep into antiquity, into the realm where myth and memory blur. Some researchers push further. If Antarctica truly is depicted ice-free, the last time its coasts were accessible would have been at least 6,000 years ago, perhaps 12,000 before the end of the last ice age. In other words, during a time when, according to mainstream history, no global seafaring civilization existed. But what if one did? What if the maps are whispers of a forgotten cartography, preserved like fossils in parchment? The idea electrifies those who seek Atlantis. Plato described a maritime empire, skilled in navigation, reaching across the seas. If such a culture once existed, might they have mapped the world before their disappearance? Might the Piri Reis map be a faint echo of their knowledge, carried forward through millennia? Consider a micro-story. In 1929, when the Piri Reis map was rediscovered, scholars were startled. Charles Hopgood, a mid-20th century historian, studied it obsessively. He proposed that it proved the existence of a civilization advanced in navigation and geography long before Greece or Rome. Hopgood even sent his findings to Albert Einstein, who responded with cautious intrigue. Einstein admitted that the map raised questions that inspire further thought and study. When one of the greatest scientific minds of the modern age pauses before a medieval parchment, curiosity deepens. Mainstream academia remains cautious. Errors in interpretation, wishful thinking, and selective readings plague pseudo-archaeology. The temptation to see Atlantis in every mystery is strong, and yet skepticism does not erase the unsettling fact. Some maps appear to contain knowledge their creators should not have had. So the question lingers. Are these maps evidence of forgotten explorers, perhaps Phoenicians or Carthaginians, who sailed further than history records? Are they echoes of even older seafarers, whose memories slipped into myth? Or are they simply accidents of ink, illusions drawn by the human eye searching for meaning? Whatever the truth, the effect is undeniable. The Piri Reis map, fragile and stained, continues to spark imagination. It is a portal into a world where our certainty frays, where the neat boundaries of history dissolve. It whispers that the Earth may have been known in ways we have forgotten, long before our age of discovery. And if maps preserve fragments of ancient memory, then perhaps the next clue lies not in parchment, but in stone monuments older than history, carved with signs we still struggle to read. Perhaps they too point to a civilization erased, and to the possibility that Atlantis is not simply a legend, but a memory of a world before our own. Deep beneath the turquoise waters off Japan's Ryukyu Islands, where warm currents carry the whispers of ancient civilizations, lies a formation so geometrically precise that it has divided the archaeological world for decades. The Yanaguni Monument discovered in 1987 by dive tour operator Kihachiro Aratek, rises from the seafloor like a massive step pyramid, its surfaces carved with what appear to be stairs, terraces, and corridors too regular to be natural, too ancient to fit conventional archaeological timelines. Professor Masaki Kimura of the University of the Ryukyus has spent decades studying the underwater structure, documenting features that seem to defy geological explanation. Perfectly straight edges intersect at precise right angles. Massive stone blocks appear to have been quarried and positioned with deliberate intent. What looks like a ceremonial platform sits atop the main structure, while smaller formations nearby suggest an entire complex of monuments now claimed by the sea. The implications are staggering if the structure proves artificial. Sea level rise after the last ice age would place human construction of the monument between 12,000 and 10,000 years ago, a period when conventional archaeology places human civilization in its infancy, when our ancestors were supposedly struggling with the basics of agriculture and animal domestication. Yet here, if Kimura is correct, stands evidence of monumental architecture that predates Stonehenge by 7 millennia. Skeptics, led by geologist Robert Schoch, argue that the Yonaguni Formation represents nothing more than natural erosion of sedimentary rock layers. The precise angles and stepped surfaces, they contend, result from the natural fracturing patterns of the local sandstone, carved by underwater currents over thousands of years. They point to similar formations on nearby land that show identical geometric patterns without any evidence of human intervention. Yet the debate extends far beyond the waters of Japan. Thousands of miles away, in the crystal-clear shallows of the Bahamas, another underwater mystery has captured the imagination of Atlantis researchers. The Bimini Road, first photographed in 1968, consists of massive limestone blocks arranged in what appears to be a paved pathway stretching for half a mile along the seafloor. The blocks, some weighing several tons, are fitted together with remarkable precision, their surfaces worn smooth by millennia of tidal action. Edgar Case's followers hailed the discovery as confirmation of the sleeping prophet's prediction that Atlantean ruins would rise from the sea near Bimini. The alignment and construction of the road, they argued, showed clear evidence of human engineering, while its submersion indicated great antiquity, possibly dating to the same ice age period that would have exposed these shallow banks to air. Marine geologists, however, have offered alternative explanations. The blocks, they suggest, represent beach rock limestone naturally cemented by chemical processes in the shallow marine environment. The linear arrangement could result from natural fracturing along bedding planes in the limestone, while the apparent precision of fit might be an illusion created by subsequent erosion and settling. The mysteries deepen in Caribbean waters off the coast of Cuba, where sonar surveys in 2001 revealed what appeared to be a vast complex of geometric structures on the ocean floor at a depth of over 2,000 feet. The formations, captured in grainy sonar images, seem to show pyramids, rectangular buildings, and circular structures arranged in patterns that suggested urban planning. If artificial, the structures would be impossibly ancient, submerged when sea levels were much lower, possibly 50,000 years ago or more. Further investigation has proven frustratingly inconclusive. The depth makes detailed exploration extraordinarily expensive and technically challenging. The few submersible dives conducted have produced ambiguous results: rock formations that might be artificial structures or might be natural geological features sculpted by underwater currents and tectonic activity. The Cuban government has restricted access to the site, leaving researchers to speculate about what lies beneath the Caribbean depths. Each of these underwater enigmas shares common characteristics that fuel Atlantean speculation. They appear in shallow waters that would have been dry land during the Ice Age. They show geometric precision that seems beyond the capabilities of prehistoric humans. They exist in regions where local legends speak of sunken cities and lost civilizations. Most tantalizingly, they remain just ambiguous enough to support multiple interpretations, leaving room for both wonder and skepticism. Modern technology has revealed that such formations are far from unique. Satellite imagery and sonar mapping have identified hundreds of geometric features on continental shelves around the world, submerged at depths that correspond to ancient sea levels. While most of these prove to be natural geological formations upon closer inspection, a few continue to resist easy explanation. The stones beneath the waves whisper of possibilities that challenge our understanding of human prehistory. Whether they speak of Atlantean engineering or simply of the remarkable capacity of natural forces to create patterns that mirror human design, they remind us that the ocean depths hold secrets we are only beginning to glimpse. In an age when we have mapped the surface of Mars with greater precision than our own ocean floors, these underwater mysteries serve as humbling reminders of how much remains unknown about the world beneath the waves. Perhaps the most profound whisper from these submerged stones is not about ancient engineering or lost civilizations, but about the fluid nature of our planet itself. The same forces that might have swallowed Atlantis continue to reshape coastlines today, reminding us that the boundary between land and sea is far more temporary than our surface-dwelling perspective suggests. In this eternal dance between stone and water, the possibility of lost cities seems less like fantasy and more like the inevitable consequence of time itself. Beyond the familiar coastlines and well-traveled shipping lanes where the Atlantic Ocean stretches unbroken toward horizons that curve with the Earth's sphere, lies the most audacious possibility of all that Atlantis rests not in shallow coastal waters or repurposed Mediterranean civilizations, but in the deep heart of the ocean itself, precisely where Plato claimed it sank beyond the Pillars of Hercules. The Mid-Atlantic Ridge, that vast underwater mountain range that bisects the ocean from Iceland to Antarctica, has long captured the imagination of Atlantis theorists. Here, volcanic forces continue to spread the seafloor apart, creating a landscape of peaks and valleys that rivals the Himalayas in scale and drama. Some of these peaks reach nearly to the surface, forming isolated islands that appear and disappear with the restless breathing of the Earth's crust. The Azores, those 9 volcanic islands scattered across 400 miles of open Atlantic, seem particularly promising to those who would place Atlantis in its Platonic location. Portuguese explorers arriving in the 15th century found islands that showed mysterious signs of previous habitation stone structures of unknown age, agricultural terraces carved into volcanic slopes, and Guanche inscriptions that some claimed matched ancient Libyan scripts. The island's position, roughly halfway between Europe and America, would have made them a natural stepping stone for any ancient civilization attempting to bridge the Atlantic. Modern geological surveys of the Azores Plateau reveal a complex history of volcanic activity and sea level change that could support the Atlantean hypothesis. During the last ice age, when ocean levels stood 400 feet lower than today, much of the plateau would have formed a single large landmass, an island approaching the size that Plato described. Volcanic activity could have destroyed portions of this proto-Azores, while rising seas claimed the rest, leaving only the highest peaks as remnants of what was once a much larger territory. Marine archaeologist Dr. Christian Kobero has documented what appear to be artificial structures on the seafloor surrounding the Azores geometric formations that sonar reveals as too regular to be natural, too ancient to fit into known historical periods. Stone walls appear to run in straight lines across the ocean bottom, while circular formations suggest the possibility of harbor installations or ceremonial sites now claimed by the depths. Yet the Atlantic hypothesis faces formidable challenges that extend beyond mere archaeological evidence. The ocean's depth in most areas would place any sunken civilization under miles of water and sediment, making discovery extraordinarily difficult even with modern technology. The violent geological forces that shape the mid-Atlantic ridge would likely have destroyed any surface, structures over the course of millennia, grinding monuments to dust beneath shifting tectonic plates. More fundamentally, mainstream archaeology sees no evidence for the kind of advanced, Bronze Age civilization that would have been necessary to establish cities in the open Atlantic. The maritime technology required to build and supply such remote settlements supposedly didn't exist until much later periods, when Phoenician and Celtic sailors first ventured beyond the Mediterranean into Atlantic waters. But other theories place Atlantis in locations that avoid these technical objections while maintaining the oceanic setting that Plato specified. The Caribbean basin, with its thousands of islands and shallow banks, could have supported a maritime civilization that combined elements of advanced engineering with more modest technological requirements. The Bahama Banks, the Caribbean's coral atolls, and the underwater plateaus off Cuba all show evidence of significant land exposure during the Ice Age. The Sargasso Sea, that mysterious region of floating seaweed and unusual ocean currents, has attracted its share of Atlantean speculation. Medieval Arab geographers wrote of islands that appeared and disappeared in these waters, while Columbus reported strange phenomena during his Atlantic crossings compass variations, unusual weather patterns, and sightings of land where his charts showed only open ocean. Modern oceanography has revealed the Atlantic to be far more dynamic and mysterious than early theories suggested. Underwater volcanoes create and destroy islands on geological timescales, while sediment cores from the ocean floor preserve detailed records of climate change, volcanic eruptions, and even possible asteroid impacts. The discovery of hydrothermal vents and underwater mountain ranges has shown that the deep ocean supports complex ecosystems and geological processes that could theoretically have sustained unique forms of civilization. Perhaps most intriguingly, recent advances in underwater archaeology have demonstrated that human settlements can indeed survive submersion under certain conditions. The discovery of well-preserved Bronze Age settlements in the Black Sea, submerged when rising Mediterranean waters breached the Bosphorus, shows that underwater sites can retain remarkable detail for thousands of years. Similar discoveries in the North Sea and off the coasts of India suggest that our ancestors built more extensively in coastal areas than previously imagined. The Atlantic hypothesis for Atlantis ultimately rests on a simple but profound possibility: that the ocean depths hold secrets we have barely begun to explore. With 95% of the seafloor unmapped and new underwater discoveries constantly revising our understanding of human prehistory, the heart of the ocean remains a vast frontier for both scientific discovery and historical speculation. Whether Atlantis lies in these depths or not, the Atlantic itself serves as a metaphor for the unknown, an immensity that dwarfs human scale and reminds us that despite our technological achievements, we remain surface creatures on a planet whose depths are as alien to us as the far reaches of space. In this context, the search for Atlantis becomes less about finding a specific lost city and more about confronting the limits of human knowledge itself. In the heart of the Sahara Desert, where endless dunes roll like frozen waves toward distant mirages, satellite cameras have captured an image so perfectly circular, so geometrically precise, that it seems to have been carved by some cosmic compass into the ancient stone of Africa. The richet structure known to locals as Gelb, a richet, and to the world as the Eye of the Sahara, spans nearly 30 miles in diameter, massive bullseye of concentric rings that matches Plato's description of Atlantis with uncanny accuracy. From space, the formation appears almost artificial in its regularity. 3 distinct concentric circles of raised ridges alternate with lower valleys, creating a pattern so perfect that early astronauts used it as a landmark during orbital missions. The outer ring measures approximately 25 miles across, while the inner rings decrease in precise proportions that echo the mathematical relationships Plato attributed to Atlantean architecture. At the center lies a small plateau, elevated above the surrounding terrain like the Acropolis that supposedly crowned the Atlantean capital. For decades, geologists dismissed the structure as a fascinating but purely natural phenomenon, an eroded dome of sedimentary rock layers that had been stripped away by wind and water over millions of years. The concentric pattern, they explained, resulted from the differential erosion of alternating hard and soft rock layers, while the circular shape emerged from the symmetrical uplift of geological forces deep beneath the desert. But a closer examination reveals features that challenge such straightforward explanations. The structure sits in one of the world's most geologically stable regions, an area of ancient bedrock that has remained essentially unchanged for hundreds of millions of years. Major geological upheavals seem unlikely in such a setting, yet the Richat structure shows clear evidence of significant vertical displacement in complex faulting patterns. More mysteriously, the formation contains materials that shouldn't exist in its current location. Volcanic rocks appear throughout the structure, despite the absence of any known volcanic activity in the region for over 100 million years. Researchers have discovered what appears to be glass created by intense heat, along with mineral formations that suggest exposure to extreme temperatures and pressures. Some of these materials bear striking resemblances to the byproducts of asteroid impacts or massive explosions. The structure's age remains hotly disputed. While the underlying geology is ancient, evidence suggests that the current formation may be much younger, possibly carved within the last 10,000 to 12,000 years. This timeframe corresponds precisely with the end of the last ice age, when dramatic climate changes transformed much of North Africa from a green, well-watered landscape into the desert we see today. Archaeological evidence from the region supports the possibility of much more recent human activity. Rock art in nearby areas depicts giraffes, hippos, and lush vegetation, confirming that the Sahara was once a fertile region that could have supported large populations. Ancient river systems, now buried beneath sand dunes, once flowed through the area where the Richat structure stands, providing the water necessary for a major civilization. Some researchers have noted that the structure's location and orientation align remarkably well with Plato's geographical descriptions. If Atlantis had indeed been located in this region when it was still green and habitable, it would have controlled access to both the Atlantic Ocean via ancient river systems and the Mediterranean through trans-Saharan trade routes. The position would have made strategic sense for a maritime empire seeking to control commerce between Europe and sub-Saharan Africa. The mathematical precision of the Richat structure as proportions has captured the attention of researchers familiar with ancient architectural traditions. The ratios between the concentric rings closely match those found in classical Greek and Roman designs, while also corresponding to mathematical relationships that appear in ancient Egyptian monuments and sacred geometry. If the structure is indeed artificial, its builders would have possessed sophisticated understanding of both engineering and mathematics. Recent satellite analysis has revealed additional geometric features surrounding the main structure, what appear to be rectangular formations, linear arrangements of stones, and possible harbor installations along the ancient riverbeds. Ground-penetrating radar has detected subsurface anomalies that some interpret as buried structures or foundations. While skeptics argue these features represent natural geological formations, their geometric regularity and apparent organization suggest the possibility of human construction. The desert itself may hold the key to understanding the structure's true nature. As climate change shifted the Sahara from grassland to desert over the course of several millennia, any civilization that existed in the region would have faced increasing challenges. Drought, advancing sand dunes, and the drying up of rivers would have created exactly the kind of environmental catastrophe that Plato described as destroying Atlantis, not through earthquake and flood, but through the opposite extreme of desiccation and abandonment. Local legends among the Tuareg and other desert peoples speak of ancient cities buried beneath the sand, places where their ancestors once lived in prosperity before the desert claimed the land. These oral traditions describe a time when rivers flowed year-round and great. Cities flourished, where now only nomads traversed the endless dunes. The stories tell of sudden climate changes that forced entire populations to migrate, leaving their monuments to be swallowed by the advancing desert. Whether the Eye of the Sahara represents the ruins of Atlantis or simply a remarkable geological coincidence, it serves as a powerful reminder of how dramatically landscapes can change over time. The satellite images that reveal its perfect circles also show the scars of ancient riverbeds, the remnants of lakes that once dotted the region, and the evidence of human habitation in areas now utterly lifeless. In this context, the possibility that a great civilization once flourished where now only sand dunes roll seems less like fantasy and more like the natural consequence of Africa as complex climatic history. The Eye continues to watch from its position in the heart of the Sahara, keeping whatever secrets may lie buried beneath millennia of accumulated sand and the relentless passage of time. In the shadowed archives of esoteric literature and the fevered imaginings of alternative historians, Atlantis emerges not merely as an advanced Bronze Age civilization, but as a technological marvel that surpassed even our modern achievements. These speculative accounts describe crystal-powered energy systems, anti-gravity transportation, and architectural marvels that defied the laws of physics as we understand them. Technologies so far beyond their supposed historical period that they seem to blur the line between archaeology and science fiction. Edgar Case's trance readings provided some of the most detailed descriptions of Atlantean technology, painting pictures of a civilization that harnessed the power of crystals to generate unlimited energy. These firestones, or Tuoi stones, as he called them, supposedly focused solar and cosmic energy through precisely cut crystalline matrices, providing power for everything from lighting and heating to propulsion systems that enabled Atlantean aircraft to traverse continents. The crystals, according to Case, were grown rather than mined, cultivated in special chambers where sound vibrations and electrical fields encouraged their geometric development. The aircraft themselves, in these accounts, bore no resemblance to modern mechanical flight. Instead, they supposedly operated through manipulation of gravitational fields, allowing them to hover silently above the Earth and travel at speeds that made global transportation routine. Atlantean cities, linked by these flying vehicles, formed a worldwide network of communication and trade that connected not only the Atlantic Empire, but outposts in Asia, South America, and the Pacific Islands. More conventional alternative researchers have pointed to genuine archaeological mysteries that seem to suggest technological capabilities beyond what mainstream history attributes to ancient peoples. The precision-cut megaliths at Pumapunku in Bolivia, with their complex interlocking shapes and perfectly smooth surfaces, appear to have been machined rather than carved by hand tools. Some blocks show evidence of drilling techniques that required speeds and pressures beyond the capacity of Bronze Age, or even Iron Age technology. The ancient megalithic structures scattered around the world, from Stonehenge to Easter Island, continue to puzzle engineers who struggle to explain how such massive stones were quarried, transported, and erected with the precision evident in their construction. The blocks of the Great Pyramid, some weighing over 70 tons, were placed with tolerances measured in millimeters. The foundation stones of the Temple of Jupiter at Baalbek in Lebanon include blocks weighing over 800 tons, transported from quarries miles away across mountainous terrain. These engineering marvels have inspired theories about lost technologies that might have made such construction relatively straightforward. Some researchers propose that ancient civilizations possess knowledge of acoustic levitation, the use of sound frequencies to reduce the effective weight of massive objects. Others suggest electromagnetic manipulation, pointing to the high quartz content of many megalithic sites and their apparent alignment with natural energy fields in the Earth's crust. The Antikythera mechanism, discovered in a Roman shipwreck and dating to around 100 BCE, provides concrete evidence that ancient technological capabilities exceeded previous assumptions. This bronze device, with its complex system of gears and astronomical calculations, functioned as an analog computer capable of predicting eclipses, planetary positions, and Olympic Games for decades in advance. Its sophistication wasn't matched by any known European device until the development of mechanical clocks in the 14th century. If such sophisticated mechanical devices existed in the Greco-Roman world, alternative researchers ask, what technologies might have been possessed by the supposedly more advanced civilization of Atlantis? The same mathematical and engineering principles that enabled the Antikythera mechanism could theoretically have been applied to much larger and more complex systems. Perhaps even the kind of advanced machinery described in ancient texts from around the world. Sanskrit literature from ancient India describes flying vehicles called vimanas, powered by mysterious energy sources and capable of intercontinental flight. The texts provide technical details about construction materials, propulsion systems, and navigation methods that seem remarkably sophisticated for supposedly mythological devices. Similar descriptions of advanced aircraft appear in ancient Sumerian texts, Egyptian hieroglyphs, and even biblical accounts of Ezekiel's wheel. Crystal technology, dismissed by mainstream science as New Age fantasy, finds indirect support in modern quantum physics and crystalline engineering. Silicon crystals form the basis of all modern electronics, while research into crystalline structures has revealed remarkable properties for energy storage, information processing, and even medical applications. Piezoelectric crystals generate electricity when subjected to pressure, while certain crystalline formations can focus and amplify electromagnetic energy in ways that might have practical applications for power generation. The possibility of anti-gravity technology, while firmly in the realm of speculation, continues to attract serious scientific research. NASA and other space agencies investigate exotic propulsion concepts that might eventually enable more efficient space travel. Some of these concepts involve manipulation of gravitational fields or exploitation of quantum effects that could theoretically provide thrust without reaction mass. While such technologies remain far beyond current capabilities, the theoretical foundations exist within accepted physics. Perhaps more importantly, the engineering marvels that do exist from ancient times suggest that our ancestors possessed practical knowledge and techniques that we have forgotten rather than surpassed. Roman concrete, with its self-healing properties and durability over 2 millennia, exceeds the performance of many modern formulations. Damascus steel, with its complex folded structure and superior strength, couldn't be replicated by European smiths for centuries after the techniques were lost. The engineers of legend, whether they built Atlantis or merely inspired its mythic reputation, remind us that technological progress is not always linear. Civilizations can possess advanced knowledge in some areas while remaining primitive in others. They can develop sophisticated techniques through centuries of trial and error, then lose that knowledge through war, climate change, or simple cultural disruption. In our age of rapid technological advancement, the possibility that previous civilizations achieved different but equally impressive technological solutions seems less like impossibility and more like probability. The question is not whether ancient peoples could have developed advanced technologies, but whether any physical evidence of such achievements has survived the erosive passage of time. Along the banks of the Nile, where the desert meets the fertile delta and monuments older than memory rise against the eternal sky, whispers persist of connections that stretch back to humanity's most ancient mysteries. In the shadow of the Great Pyramid and within the corridors of temples carved from living rock, some researchers claim to find echoes of Atlantis threads of knowledge and architectural mastery that suggest the survivors of Plato's lost civilization found refuge among the priest kings of ancient Egypt. The connections begin with Plato himself, who claimed the story of Atlantis came from Egyptian sources. In his dialogues, the Athenian lawgiver Solon learns of the sunken continent from priests at the Temple of Neith in Sais, who preserve records stretching back thousands of years before even the oldest Greek memories. These priests, according to Plato, possessed archives that recorded the rise and fall of civilizations unknown to the Greeks, written on imperishable materials that survived the floods and fires that destroyed lesser records. Herodotus, writing a century before Plato, confirmed the existence of such archives and the extraordinary historical knowledge of Egyptian priests. He described vast temple libraries containing accounts of dynasties so ancient that their names were forgotten, even by the Egyptians themselves. The priests spoke of periods when the sun rose in the west and set in the east, of times when the calendar itself was different, and of visitations by beings who brought the arts of civilization to the Nile Valley. The conventional chronology of Egyptian civilization already strains against the evidence of advanced knowledge embedded in its earliest monuments. The Great Pyramid demonstrates mathematical and astronomical precision that exceeds the requirements of a simple tomb. Its dimensions encode the proportions of the Earth itself, while its internal chambers align with stellar positions that suggest knowledge of precession, the slow wobble of the Earth's S-axis that takes 26,000 years to complete a full cycle. Alternative researchers point to evidence that Egyptian civilization appeared with remarkable suddenness and sophistication. The transition from pre-dynastic culture to the unified kingdom under Menes shows a dramatic leap in organizational complexity, architectural achievement, and technological capability. The hieroglyphic writing system appears fully formed without clear evolutionary predecessors, while the mathematical and astronomical knowledge displayed in early monuments suggests inheritance from an even more ancient source. The Sphinx, weathered by millennia of desert winds, has become a focal point for theories about pre-dynastic advanced civilization. Geological analysis by Robert Schoch and others suggests that the monument's weathering patterns result from rainfall rather than wind erosion implying construction during a much wetter climate period that ended around 10,000 years ago. If accurate, this dating would place the Sphinx's creation in the immediate aftermath of the last ice age, precisely when Atlantis was supposedly destroyed. Within the Great Pyramid itself, anomalies continue to emerge that challenge conventional understanding. Ground-penetrating radar and cosmic ray imaging have revealed hidden chambers and void spaces that don't appear on any architectural plans. The precision of the pyramid's construction exceeds the tolerances of many modern buildings, while the methods used to achieve such accuracy remain mysterious. Some researchers suggest that the builders possessed surveying and engineering techniques that were lost and only rediscovered in recent centuries. The mathematical relationships encoded in Egyptian monuments show knowledge that supposedly wasn't developed until much later periods. The golden ratio, the value of pi, and complex geometric relationships appear repeatedly in pyramid construction, temple proportions, and artistic compositions. The precision of these mathematical applications suggests not accidental approximation, but deliberate incorporation of advanced mathematical concepts. Egyptian mythology itself preserves stories that some interpret as memories of Atlantean contact. The god Thoth, keeper of wisdom and inventor of writing, was said to have come from the west across the Great Water, bringing the arts of civilization to primitive tribes along the Nile. The Zet Tepi, or first time, described in Egyptian religious texts as a golden age when the gods ruled directly on earth, occurred in the distant past when the climate and geography of Egypt were dramatically different from historical periods. The mysterious Edfu texts, carved on the walls of the Temple of Horus, describe the establishment of Egyptian civilization by survivors of a great catastrophe. These texts speak of refugees who arrived in primitive boats after their homeland was destroyed by flood, bringing with them the knowledge needed to build temples and establish the rituals that would preserve their wisdom for future generations. The descriptions include technical details about sacred architecture and astronomical alignments that suggest sophisticated understanding of both engineering and astronomy. Modern Egyptology, while acknowledging the remarkable achievements of ancient Egyptian civilization, generally rejects theories of Atlantean influence as unnecessary speculation. The development of Egyptian culture, they argue, can be traced through archaeological evidence and shows clear connections to earlier African and Near Eastern cultures. The sophistication of Egyptian achievements reflects the accumulated knowledge of generations of skilled craftsmen and scholars, not inheritance from a lost super-civilization. Yet the precision and consistency of advanced knowledge in Egyptian monuments continues to challenge conventional explanations. The astronomical alignments are too accurate to result from primitive observation techniques. The mathematical relationships are too sophisticated to emerge from trial-and-error construction methods. The sudden appearance of fully developed hieroglyphic writing suggests influence from an already literate culture. Perhaps most intriguingly, genetic studies of ancient Egyptian mummies have revealed unexpected diversity in the population, including genetic markers that suggest contact with populations from distant regions. Some of these genetic signatures appear to have entered Egyptian bloodlines, precisely during the pre-dynastic period when the most dramatic cultural advances occurred. The echoes of Atlantis in Egypt may not represent literal colonization by Atlantean survivors, but rather the influence of advanced knowledge from an unknown source. Whether that source was a single lost civilization or a network of advanced cultures that flourished during the climatic transitions at the end of the Ice Age, the evidence suggests that Egyptian civilization inherited wisdom from sources that mainstream archaeology has yet to identify or fully understand. In the silence of the pyramid chambers and the precision of ancient measurements, the possibility persists that Egypt's priests preserved more than religious texts in their sacred archives, that they maintained, perhaps unknowingly, the last fragments of humanity's most ancient and sophisticated achievements. Across the windswept plateau of Giza, where three pyramids rise against the star-scattered darkness of the Egyptian night, astronomers have discovered alignments, so precise, so deliberately constructed, that they seem to encode a message written in stone and stellar fire. These monuments, along with similar structures scattered across continents and centuries, appear to map the heavens with an accuracy that exceeds the needs of simple calendar keeping, suggesting that their builders possessed not only advanced astronomical knowledge, but perhaps memories of an even more ancient cosmic relationship. The revelation began in the 1990s when Belgian engineer Robert Bouval noticed that the three pyramids of Giza precisely mirror the arrangement of the three stars in Orion's belt, not as they appeared when the pyramids were built, but as they would have appeared around 1500 BC, when precession would have placed the constellation at its lowest point in the southern sky. This astronomical dating coincides remarkably with the end of the last ice age and the hypothetical destruction of Atlantis in Plato's timeline. The correlation extends far beyond simple positional matching. The Great Pyramid's internal chambers align with specific stellar positions from the same epoch. The so-called King's Chamber points toward Orion, while the Queen's Chamber aligns with Sirius, the star system that the ancient Egyptians associated with the goddess Isis and the annual flooding of the Nile. These alignments are so precise that they required advanced understanding not only of astronomy, but also of the complex mathematical relationships that govern stellar motion over thousands of years. Similar astronomical precision appears in monuments around the world, often dating to periods that conventional archaeology considers technologically primitive. Stonehenge, constructed in phases over more than 1,000 years, shows alignments with multiple celestial events: the summer and winter solstices, the rising and setting points of the moon at its extreme positions, and the cycles of eclipses that repeat every 18.6 years. The monument functions as a sophisticated astronomical computer, capable of predicting celestial events decades in advance. The temple complex at Angkor Wat in Cambodia built in the 12th century CE, mirrors the constellation Draco as it appeared at the time of construction, while also encoding the cycles of Hindu cosmology in its architectural proportions. In the Americas, the precision becomes even more remarkable. The city of Teotihuacan in Mexico, with its massive Pyramid of the Sun and Pyramid of the Moon, aligns with the Pleiades star cluster and incorporates mathematical relationships that encode the orbital periods of Venus and Mars. The street grid of the entire city appears to have been laid out according to astronomical principles, with major structures positioned to mark significant celestial events. Machu Picchu, the lost city of the Incas, perched high in the Peruvian Andes, contains astronomical features that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of solar and stellar cycles. The Intihuatana stone, carved from living bedrock at the site's highest point, functions as a precise solar clock, while various structures frame the rising and setting positions of important stars. The precision of these alignments required knowledge of astronomy that exceeded even Spanish capabilities at the time of conquest. Perhaps most mysteriously, many of these ancient astronomical sites show awareness of stellar positions and celestial cycles that are invisible to naked eye observation. The builders of the pyramids incorporated knowledge of stellar parallax, the apparent motion of stars caused by Earth's orbital motion around the Sun centuries before telescopes made such measurements possible. They understood precession, that slow wobble of Earth's axis that takes 26,000 years to complete, despite the fact that detecting this motion requires observations spanning multiple generations. The global pattern of astronomical alignment suggests either remarkable coincidence or shared knowledge among cultures separated by vast distances and thousands of years. The consistency of certain stellar references, particularly Orion, Sirius, and the Pleiades across diverse civilizations, implies that these star systems held special significance that transcended local religious traditions and mythological frameworks. Alternative researchers propose that this astronomical knowledge represents the heritage of a global civilization that existed before the rise of known historical cultures. If Atlantis or a similar advanced society had possessed sophisticated understanding of astronomy, its survivors could have carried this knowledge to various parts of the world, where it became incorporated into local traditions and monuments. The precision and consistency of the astronomical alignments would thus represent not independent discovery, but inherited wisdom from a common source. Mainstream archaeology offers more conservative explanations for these patterns. Ancient peoples, they argue, were careful observers of natural phenomena and developed sophisticated astronomical knowledge through generations of patient observation. The alignments reflect the practical needs of agricultural societies that required accurate calendars for planting and harvesting. The apparent precision might be enhanced by modern observers who unconsciously select data that supports their theories while ignoring contradictory evidence. Yet the mathematical sophistication required for some of these alignments exceeds practical calendar needs. The incorporation of precession into monument design requires understanding of mathematical relationships that took modern astronomy centuries to recognize. The precision of stellar alignments in structures like the pyramids suggests not only advanced observational techniques, but also sophisticated theories about the relationship between Earth and sky. Recent discoveries have added new dimensions to the mystery. Satellite archaeology has revealed that many ancient sites are positioned according to geometric relationships that span entire continents. The distances between major monuments often encode mathematical constants and astronomical cycles, suggesting that their builders conceived of monument construction on a truly global scale. The star maps of stone continue to challenge our understanding of ancient knowledge and capabilities. Whether they represent the achievements of individual cultures or the scattered inheritance of a lost global civilization, they demonstrate that our ancestors possessed astronomical wisdom that rivals and sometimes exceeds our modern understanding. In the precise alignments of pyramid chambers and the complex calculations encoded in stone circles, We glimpse minds that saw the cosmos not as distant and separate, but as intimately connected to human destiny and achievement. These monuments stand as testament to humanity's ancient relationship with the stars, relationship so profound that it inspired our ancestors to move mountains of stone in order to preserve their cosmic knowledge for future generations. In their silence, they continue to whisper of connections between earth and sky that we are only beginning to rediscover. In remote valleys and forgotten archives, in the oral traditions of isolated peoples, and the strange artifacts that surface in places where they shouldn't exist, fragments of an ancient puzzle continue to emerge, scattered pieces of evidence that some researchers believe point toward a global civilization whose influence touched every corner of the inhabited world before vanishing into the mists of prehistory. The Aboriginals of Australia, whose oral traditions stretch back over 40,000 years, speak of the dream time when great beings traveled between distant lands across bridges that no longer exist. Their song lines invisible pathways that crisscross the continent, preserve memories of geographical features that disappeared beneath rising seas at the end of the last ice age. Some of these traditions describe visitors from across the great waters, who brought new knowledge and technologies before departing in their swift vessels when the world was young. Half a world away, in the highlands of Peru, the Ashiro people maintain oral histories that speak of their ancestors' contact with bearded strangers who arrived before the Spanish conquest. These visitors, according to legend, possessed advanced knowledge of agriculture, astronomy, and stoneworking techniques. They taught the construction of agricultural terraces and irrigation systems, then departed across the Western Ocean, promising to return when the world faced great changes. The timing of these legendary visits, according to traditional chronologies, places them thousands of years before any known transoceanic contact. Archaeological anomalies support these unlikely stories of ancient contact between distant cultures. Roman-era artifacts have been discovered in pre-Columbian contexts in the Americas, including coins, sculptures, and pottery that appear to predate Columbus by over 1,000 years. While mainstream archaeology explains these as modern intrusions or misidentified objects, some pieces show clear evidence of ancient burial contexts that are difficult to dismiss. The Bat Creek inscription, discovered in a Cherokee burial mound in Tennessee, contains Hebrew-style characters that some scholars interpret as evidence of ancient Middle Eastern contact with Native American peoples. Radiocarbon dating of associated organic materials suggests the inscription is genuinely ancient, predating known Jewish presence in North America by centuries. Similar inscriptions in ancient scripts Hebrew, Phoenician, and Celtic Ogham have been reported from sites across the American continent, though most remain controversial. Genetic studies have revealed unexpected connections between populations that should have been isolated from each other during prehistoric periods. Some Native American populations show genetic markers typically associated with European or Mediterranean peoples, while certain Pacific Island populations carry genetic signatures that suggest ancient contact with South American groups. These patterns are difficult to explain through known migration routes and historical contexts. The distribution of specific technological innovations also suggests ancient global connections that predate known historical contacts. The technique of creating Damascus steel, with its characteristic watered pattern and superior strength, appeared independently in locations as distant as India, Syria, and pre-Columbian Peru. The mathematical concept of zero emerged simultaneously in Maya mathematics and Indian numbering systems without apparent cultural contact. The precision cutting of massive stone blocks using similar techniques appears in megalithic sites on every inhabited continent. Language similarities provide another layer of puzzling evidence. Linguists have identified cognates words with apparent common origins between languages that should have separated before human speech developed its current complexity. Some of these similarities appear to be too specific and numerous to result from chance. Yet they exist between language families that supposedly split apart tens of thousands of years ago. The Ainu people of Japan preserve traditions that describe their ancestors' knowledge of lands far to the south and east, beyond the great waters where the sun rises. Their traditional bear ceremonies show remarkable similarities to rituals practiced by Native American peoples of the Pacific Northwest, while their creation myths contain elements that echo throughout Polynesian traditions. Genetic analysis reveals that the Ainu possess unique markers that suggest ancient connections to populations across the Pacific. Maps found in Chinese archives describe Pacific islands and navigation routes that were unofficially discovered by European explorers until much later periods. These maps show detailed knowledge of ocean currents, seasonal wind patterns, and island positions that would have required extensive oceanic exploration. Some of the maps appear to date from periods when Chinese civilization was supposedly focused entirely on continental affairs. Easter Island presents perhaps the most compelling single example of ancient transoceanic contact. The massive moai statues demonstrate sophisticated stone carving techniques, while the island's original Polynesian name, Rapa Nui, shows linguistic connections to South America rather than other Pacific cultures. Sweet potatoes, native to South America, were growing on Pacific islands when European explorers arrived, indicating prehistoric contact across thousands of miles of open ocean. Recent underwater archaeology has revealed structures off the coasts of India, Japan, and the Caribbean that appear to date from periods when sea levels were much lower. These submerged sites often show construction techniques and architectural styles that differ significantly from known cultures in those regions, suggesting influence from unknown sources or contact with distant civilizations. The cumulative weight of these scattered anomalies creates a pattern that challenges conventional models of ancient history. While each individual piece of evidence can be disputed or explained away, their combined presence across multiple continents and cultures suggests possibilities that mainstream archaeology has been reluctant to consider. Whether these shards of memory represent the scattered influence of Atlantis or simply the achievements of ancient peoples whose capabilities exceeded our assumptions, they point toward a human past that was more interconnected and sophisticated than our textbooks suggest. In remote valleys and forgotten archives in genetic markers and linguistic puzzles, the fragments continue to surface pieces of a vast puzzle that may never be completely assembled but continues to hint at truths that lie just beyond the edge of accepted knowledge. The whispers of ancient contact and lost civilizations persist in these scattered evidences, reminding us that human history may be far stranger and more wonderful than we have yet dared to imagine. In the spaces between known facts and accepted theories, the possibility of Atlantis finds nourishment in 1,000 small mysteries that continue to surface from the depths of time. 20,000 years ago, when glaciers 2 miles thick covered much of North America and Europe, the world was a fundamentally different place, not just colder, but geographically transformed in ways that offered possibilities for human civilization that no longer exist. In this alien landscape of exposed continental shelves and ice-locked continents, the stage was set for developments that would be erased when the Great Melt began, leaving only tantalizing traces for modern researchers to decode. The ocean levels of the Ice Age stood 400 feet lower than today, exposing vast plains that are now beneath the waves. The Bering Land Bridge connected Asia and North America across a region nearly as large as Alaska. Britain was part of the European mainland, joined by the fertile plains of Doggerland, a region now beneath the North Sea, where archaeologists have found evidence of sophisticated hunter-gatherer societies that flourished for thousands of years before drowning beneath the post-glacial floods. In Southeast Asia, the Sunda Shelf created a vast landmass that connected the Malay Peninsula with Indonesia and extended hundreds of miles beyond the current coastlines. This tropical continent, now fragmented into thousands of islands, could have supported dense populations and complex societies during the Ice Age. Archaeological evidence from the region suggests that the ancestors of modern humans achieved remarkable maritime capabilities much earlier than previously believed. Island hopping across open water with boats sophisticated enough to transport entire communities. The Mediterranean was smaller and shallower, with significant portions of its current seafloor exposed as habitable land. The Black Sea was a freshwater lake, isolated from the Mediterranean by a land bridge at the Bosphorus. When this barrier finally breached around 7,500 years ago, the resulting flood was so sudden and catastrophic that some researchers believe it inspired flood legends throughout the ancient Near East. The survivors of thriving lakeside civilizations would have witnessed their entire world disappear beneath incoming waters in a matter of months. This dramatically different geography created opportunities for human development that modern archaeology is only beginning to appreciate. The exposed continental shelves provided extensive coastal plains that would have been ideal for early agricultural experiments and settled communities. These areas, with their moderate climates and access to both marine and terrestrial resources, could have supported population densities and cultural complexities that rivaled those of later river valley civilizations. Recent discoveries off the coast of India have revealed submerged structures that appear to date from precisely this period of lower sea levels. The ruins of Dwarka, mentioned in ancient Hindu texts as Krishna's capital city, show evidence of sophisticated urban planning and construction techniques. Carbon dating of organic materials from the site suggests occupation during the period when the area was above sea level, making it one of the oldest known examples of planned urban development. Similar discoveries in the Gulf of Cambay have revealed a submerged civilization that flourished in an area now under 120 feet of water. Artifacts recovered from the site, including pottery, tools, and architectural remains, suggest a level of cultural sophistication that predates known Indian civilizations by thousands of years. The geometric regularity of the structures and their apparent integration with natural water features indicate advanced understanding of both engineering and environmental management. The rapid climate changes that ended the Ice Age created conditions that would have severely challenged any existing civilizations. The Younger Dryas period, beginning around 12,900 years ago, saw a sudden return to near glacial conditions that lasted for over 1,000 years. This climate reversal was followed by equally dramatic warming that melted ice sheets with unprecedented speed, causing sea levels to rise by several feet per decade in some periods. These rapid changes would have forced coastal populations to retreat constantly inland, abandoning settlements and infrastructure that had taken centuries to develop. Archaeological evidence from this period shows widespread cultural disruption, population movements, and the abandonment of complex societies across multiple continents. The survivors would have been faced with the challenge of rebuilding their civilizations in entirely new geographic contexts. The possibility that advanced Ice Age civilizations existed and were subsequently destroyed by climate change gained support from unexpected sources. The sophisticated astronomical knowledge embedded in later monuments suggests inheritance from much older traditions of systematic observation. The mathematical concepts that appear fully formed in early historical civilizations imply long periods of development that would have required stable societies with specialized knowledge-keeping classes. Genetic studies of modern human populations reveal patterns of migration and mixing that occurred precisely during the period of dramatic climate change at the end of the Ice Age. These genetic signatures suggest large-scale population movements and cultural exchanges that would have been necessary if survivors of coastal civilizations were forced to relocate to higher ground and integrate with inland populations. The oral traditions of indigenous peoples around the world preserve memories of dramatic landscape changes that correspond to the end of the Ice Age. Australian Aboriginal songlines describe the formation of current coastal features through the drowning of extensive inland plains. Native American traditions speak of times when the great waters rose to cover ancestral homelands. These stories, passed down through dozens of generations, may preserve actual memories of the geographic transformations that ended the Ice Age world. Perhaps most intriguingly, the pattern of human cultural development immediately following the Ice Age shows a remarkable burst of innovation and complexity that some researchers find difficult to explain through gradual evolution alone. The rapid development of agriculture, in multiple locations the sudden appearance of monumental architecture, and the sophisticated understanding of mathematics and astronomy displayed by early civilizations all suggest that these achievements, built upon knowledge bases that had been developing during the previous largely invisible Ice Age period. The world before the ice was not just geographically different, but potentially home to human societies, whose achievements we have yet to recognize or understand. As the Great Melt swept away their coastal homelands and transformed the global landscape, the survivors may have carried fragments of their accumulated knowledge to the highlands and river valleys where historical civilization eventually emerged. In the drowned landscapes of the continental shelves, in the genetic patterns of modern populations, and in the oral traditions of ancient peoples, the shadow of this lost world continues to shape our understanding of human possibility. The ice may have hidden and the floods may have erased, but the echoes of that ancient world whisper, still in the spaces between what we know and what we have yet to discover. 12,900 years ago, as the last ice age was drawing to its close and global temperatures had begun their steady climb toward the warm period that would nurture early civilization, something extraordinary happened in the skies above North America. Evidence locked in ice cores' sediment layers, and the scarred geology of two continents tells the story of an impact so catastrophic that it reset the trajectory of human development and may have inspired the flood legends that echo through every ancient culture. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, proposed by nuclear chemist Richard Firestone and geologist Alan West, suggests that a comet or asteroid struck the Laurentide ice sheet that covered much of Canada and the northern United States. The impact, or more likely a series of impacts from a fragmented celestial body, occurred around 12,900 years ago, precisely at the beginning of the Younger Dryas cold period that saw global temperatures plunge back toward glacial conditions for over 1,000 years. The evidence for this cosmic catastrophe appears in geological layers across North America and Northern Europe. A thin black mat, rich in carbon and containing microscopic diamonds, nanodiamonds, and other materials that form only under extreme pressure and temperature, marks the boundary between the end of the Ice Age and the beginning of the Younger Dryas cooling. This layer also contains elevated levels of iridium, platinum, and other elements rare on Earth's surface, but common in asteroids and comets. Perhaps most tellingly, the boundary layer contains spherules, tiny glass beads that form when rock is melted by extreme heat and then rapidly cooled. These spherules show chemical compositions consistent with the instantaneous melting of both ice sheet material and underlying bedrock, exactly what would be expected from a high-energy impact on a glaciated surface. Similar spherules have been found at known impact sites around the world, providing a clear signature of cosmic collision. The scale of the hypothetical impact was staggering. Computer models suggest that a comet fragment several kilometers in diameter striking the ice sheet at cosmic velocity would have instantly vaporized billions of tons of ice and rock, sending a superheated plume of steam and debris high into the atmosphere. The energy release would have exceeded that of all nuclear weapons ever built, creating a blast wave that would have been felt across continents. The immediate consequences would have been catastrophic for any human populations in North America. The Clovis culture, which had spread across the continent during the preceding warm period, virtually disappeared from the archaeological record at precisely this time. Their distinctive spear points, which had been ubiquitous across North America, suddenly vanished from excavation sites, suggesting either extinction or massive cultural disruption that erased their technological traditions. Simultaneously, North America's megafauna began their final extinction. Mammoths, mastodons, giant ground sloths, saber-toothed cats, and dozens of other large species disappeared within a few centuries of the impact date. While climate change certainly played a role in these extinctions, the precise timing and the fact that similar species had survived previous climate transitions suggest that additional factors were involved, possibly the environmental disruption caused by the impact and its aftermath. The global effects would have been equally dramatic. The massive injection of water vapor and particulates into the atmosphere would have altered weather patterns worldwide, triggering the 1,000-year cooling period known as the Younger Dryas. Ocean currents, driven by temperature and salinity differences, would have been disrupted by the sudden influx of fresh water from melting ice, potentially shutting down the Gulf Stream and other major circulation patterns that moderate global climate. For human populations elsewhere in the world, these changes would have created exactly the kinds of catastrophic conditions described in flood myths and legends of cosmic destruction. Rapidly rising sea levels from ice sheet melting, combined with extreme weather events and disrupted seasonal patterns, would have forced the abandonment of coastal settlements and the migration of entire populations. The impact hypothesis provides a mechanism that could explain the global synchronization of flood legends and cultural disruptions that mark this period in human history. Unlike gradual climate changes or local geological events, a cosmic impact would have created worldwide effects that all human populations would have experienced simultaneously. The survivors' memories of this global catastrophe could have formed the basis for the remarkably similar flood and destruction myths found in cultures around the world. If Atlantis existed as a sophisticated coastal civilization during the pre-impact period, the cosmic catastrophe would have sealed its fate. The immediate effects of the impact, massive tsunamis, global earthquakes, and dramatic climate disruption would have overwhelmed even the most advanced ancient engineering. The subsequent millennium of cooling and instability would have prevented any possibility of recovery or rebuilding on the original scale. Recent astronomical research has identified the source of the hypothetical impact in the Taurid meteor stream, which Earth encounters twice yearly as it orbits the Sun. This stream contains the debris from a massive comet that fragmented in the inner solar system sometime within the last 30,000 years. Computer models suggest that Earth would have encountered the densest part of this debris field around 12,900 years ago, making multiple impacts not only possible, but probable. The discovery of a massive crater beneath the Hiawatha Glacier in Greenland, announced in 2018, provides potential physical evidence for the impact hypothesis. The crater, over 30 kilometers in diameter, shows features consistent with impact by a kilometer-wide object. While the exact age of the crater remains disputed, some estimates place it within the time frame of the proposed Younger Dryas impact. Modern research into near-Earth objects has revealed that cosmic impacts capable of global civilization disruption occur much more frequently than previously believed. The Tunguska event of 1908, which flattened 2,000 square kilometers of Siberian forest, demonstrated that even relatively small cosmic objects can cause regional catastrophes. Larger impacts, while rarer, have repeatedly reshaped both the geological and biological history of our planet. The catastrophe from the sky serves as a reminder that human civilization exists within a cosmic context that extends far beyond terrestrial concerns. The advanced astronomical knowledge displayed by ancient monuments may reflect not just scientific curiosity, but practical necessity, the urgent need to track celestial objects that posed existential threats to human survival. Whether the Younger Dryas impact destroyed Atlantis specifically, or simply created the conditions that would have made any Ice Age civilization impossible to sustain, it represents a turning point in human history. The event reset the trajectory of human development, forcing our ancestors to rebuild their knowledge and societies from fragments, preserved by survivors who carried the memory of better times into a changed and more dangerous world. In the crushing darkness of the ocean depths, where pressure would instantly destroy any surface-dwelling creature in perpetual night, has reigned since the formation of the seas, lies 95% of our planet's habitable space, a realm so vast and unexplored that it makes the surface of Mars seem familiar by comparison. Here, in the silence that has lasted for millennia, the possibility exists that entire civilizations could rest undiscovered, their monuments preserved by the very forces that make exploration so extraordinarily difficult. The statistics of our ignorance are humbling. Of the 361 million square kilometers of ocean surface, we have thoroughly mapped less than 20% of the seafloor beneath. Our knowledge of the deep ocean's geography is so limited that the maps of Venus and Mars show more detail than charts of our own planet's ocean bottom. Every year, research vessels discover underwater mountain ranges, volcanic systems, and geological formations that were completely unknown to science, revealing that even the basic geography of Earth remains largely mysterious. The technological challenges of deep-sea exploration dwarf those faced by space missions. At the bottom of the deepest ocean trenches, pressure exceeds 1,100 times that at sea level, equivalent to the weight of 50 jumbo jets pressing down on every square meter. The eternal darkness requires artificial illumination for any observation, while the corrosive saltwater environment destroys equipment with relentless efficiency. Submersibles capable of reaching these depths cost hundreds of millions of dollars to build and operate, making systematic exploration prohibitively expensive. Yet in the small portions of the deep ocean that have been explored, scientists have found wonders that challenge every assumption about what can exist in such extreme environments. Hydrothermal vents support complex ecosystems that derive energy not from sunlight, but from chemical processes, creating oases of life in the deep desert of the abyssal plains. Underwater mountains host coral gardens of stunning beauty and biological diversity, while vast canyons rival the Grand Canyon in scale and complexity. Perhaps most significantly for those who search for evidence of lost civilizations, the deep ocean environment provides extraordinary preservation conditions for artifacts and structures. The cold temperatures, high pressure, and absence of oxygen create natural refrigeration that can preserve organic materials for thousands of years. Shipwrecks from the Bronze Age have been found in deep Mediterranean waters with their wooden hulls and cargo intact, while similar vessels in shallow coastal waters would have long since disintegrated. The discovery of the Antikythera wreck in 1976 demonstrated how completely the deep ocean can preserve ancient artifacts. The ship, which sank over 2,000 years ago, contained bronze mechanisms of such complexity that their purpose puzzled researchers for decades. The anaerobic conditions of the deep water had prevented the normal corrosion that would have destroyed such delicate devices in shallower waters. If such sophisticated technology could survive at relatively modest depths, what might be preserved in the true depths of the ocean basins? Recent advances in underwater archaeology have revealed that human settlements extended much further onto continental shelves during periods of lower sea level than previously imagined. The discovery of sophisticated Neolithic settlements in the Black Sea, submerged when the Mediterranean breached the Bosphorus, showed that entire cities could be preserved beneath the waves. Similar finds off the coasts of India, Japan, and the Americas suggest that underwater archaeology has barely begun to reveal the extent of human occupation in areas now beneath the sea. The technical requirements for exploring the deepest parts of the ocean mean that only a handful of submersibles worldwide are capable of reaching the depths where the most ancient evidence might be preserved. The famous research vessel Alvin, which discovered the Titanic and explored hydrothermal vents, can reach depths of only 4,500 meters, less than half the maximum depth of the ocean. Full ocean depth capability requires specialized vehicles that exist in extremely limited numbers and are available for only a few dozen dives per year. This exploration bottleneck means that vast areas of the ocean floor remain completely unexplored by human observation. Sonar mapping can reveal the gross topography of the seafloor, but it cannot distinguish between natural rock formations and artificial structures, especially when those structures have been modified by millions of years of sedimentation and marine growth. Many of the underwater formations that have sparked Atlantean speculation, such as the Bimini Road or the structures off Cuba, remain ambiguous precisely because detailed exploration is so technically challenging and expensive. The geology of the ocean floor adds another layer of complexity to the search for ancient evidence. Tectonic activity continuously reshapes the deep ocean landscape, subducting some areas beneath crustal plates while creating new seafloor through volcanic activity at mid-ocean ridges. Sediment deposition from continental erosion gradually buries surface features beneath layers of accumulated material. These processes mean that evidence of human activity from 10,000 or more years ago might be buried under hundreds of feet of sediment or destroyed entirely by geological processes. Yet the same forces that make ocean exploration difficult also create opportunities for preservation that don't exist on land. Underwater landslides can instantly bury and preserve archaeological sites, creating time capsules that remain unchanged for millennia. The stable temperature and chemical conditions of deep water prevent the freeze-thaw cycles and chemical weathering that destroy surface monuments. Marine growth can actually protect underlying structures from erosion while creating distinctive formations that might preserve the shapes of artificial features. The recent discovery of extensive underwater cave systems has revealed that even areas now beneath the sea contained air-filled spaces during periods of lower sea level. These caves, some extending for miles beneath the current seafloor, could have provided shelter for human populations during the Ice Age. When rising seas flooded these underground spaces, they would have created preservation conditions even better than the open, ocean-sealed environments where organic materials and artifacts could survive unchanged for thousands of years. Satellite technology has begun to reveal the hidden topography of the ocean floor through gravitational measurements and advanced sonar techniques. But these methods can only detect large-scale features. The resolution remains far too coarse to identify individual structures or distinguish between natural and artificial formations. Until more capable underwater exploration technology becomes available, vast areas of the seafloor will remain as unknown to us as the far side of the moon was to previous generations. The silence of the deep continues to guard its secrets, holding in its crushing embrace the largest repository of potentially undiscovered history on our planet. Whether that history includes the remains of Atlantis or simply the forgotten achievements of Ice Age peoples built along coastlines now hundreds of feet underwater, the ocean depths represent humanity's greatest frontier for archaeological discovery. In the darkness beneath the waves, where pressure creates diamonds and life thrives without sunlight, the possibility persists that entire chapters of human achievement await rediscovery. The silence that has protected these depths for millennia may yet yield voices from the past that will transform our understanding of what our ancestors achieved in ages we have assumed were primitive. Until we develop the technology and commit the resources necessary to explore these depths systematically, the ocean will continue to hold its secrets in the crushing embrace of the deep silence. In the shadowed corridors of power, where classified documents bear stamps that few eyes will ever see, and conversations occur in rooms shielded from electronic surveillance, whispers persist of knowledge too dangerous for public consumption. According to certain researchers and conspiracy theorists, the truth about Atlantis has been found documented and deliberately suppressed by governments and secret organizations who understand that revealing such discoveries would fundamentally alter humanity's understanding of its own history and capabilities. The modern version of this theory traces its origins to claims made by psychic Edgar Cayce in the 1930s, who predicted that Atlantean ruins would be discovered, and that powerful interests would work to suppress this knowledge. His followers point to the apparent reluctance of mainstream archaeology to investigate certain underwater anomalies and the classification of deep-sea research that might reveal inconvenient truths about human prehistory. During the Cold War, both American and Soviet military forces conducted extensive oceanographic research under the guise of submarine warfare preparation. These programs, funded by defense budgets that dwarfed civilian scientific research, deployed advanced sonar systems and deep-sea exploration technology to map ocean floors and underwater terrain. Some researchers claim that these military expeditions discovered evidence of ancient civilizations, but classified their findings as state secrets to prevent rival nations from gaining access to potentially revolutionary technologies. The U.S. Navy's Seabed Research Program, operational from the 1960s through the 1980s, deployed nuclear-powered submarines capable of deep ocean exploration and underwater construction. Official records of this program remain largely classified, leading to speculation about what kinds of discoveries might have warranted such secrecy. Similarly, the Soviet Union's parallel deep-sea programs conducted under military authority produced no public scientific publications despite decades of intensive underwater research. Modern conspiracy theories focus on the apparent coordination between government agencies and academic institutions to discourage investigation of certain underwater anomalies. When sonar surveys reveal geometric formations on the ocean floor, funding for follow-up exploration often proves impossible to obtain. When underwater photographers document structures that appear artificial, mainstream archaeological journals decline to publish their findings, citing insufficient evidence or alternative natural explanations. The 2001 discovery of geometric structures off the coast of Cuba provides a case study in alleged suppression. Advanced deep-water sonar revealed what appeared to be a vast complex of pyramids and rectangular buildings at depths of over 2,000 feet. The images generated international excitement and speculation about possible Atlantean connections. However, detailed follow-up exploration was never completed, with the Cuban government restricting access to the site and funding for further research mysteriously evaporating. Some researchers point to patterns in the career trajectories of scientists who pursue underwater archaeology in sensitive areas. Marine archaeologist Dr. Robert Ballard, famous for discovering the Titanic, has made cryptic references to underwater discoveries that he was not permitted to discuss publicly. His expeditions, often funded through military contracts, reportedly encountered artificial structures that were immediately classified under national security provisions. The Vatican's secret archives, containing millions of documents spanning 2 millennia, supposedly include references to Atlantean discoveries made during various historical periods. According to these theories, Catholic missionaries and explorers reported finding evidence of advanced pre-Columbian civilizations in the Americas and submitted detailed accounts to church authorities. These reports, filed away in the Vatican's most secure collections, allegedly describe technologies and achievements that contradict official church teachings about human history and divine creation. Secret societies, from the Freemasons to modern versions of the Illuminati, are said to possess ancient knowledge about human origins and lost civilizations. These organizations, according to conspiracy theorists, maintain their power partly through controlling access to archaeological discoveries that would upset established social and religious orders. The symbology of such groups often includes references to advanced ancient wisdom and lost golden ages that seem to echo Atlantean themes. The suppression theory extends to financial institutions and energy corporations that allegedly have economic incentives to prevent the discovery of ancient technologies. If Atlantean crystal-powered energy systems or anti-gravity devices were real and recoverable, they could render entire industries obsolete overnight. The potential economic disruption provides a motive for powerful corporate interests to suppress archaeological research that might lead to such discoveries. Mainstream archaeologists and oceanographers reject these conspiracy theories as unfounded speculation that mistakes normal scientific caution for deliberate suppression. The classification of military oceanographic research, they point out, relates to submarine warfare capabilities and strategic intelligence rather than archaeological discoveries. The reluctance to investigate ambiguous underwater formations reflects limited research budgets and the high standards of evidence required for extraordinary claims. The peer review process that governs scientific publication, while sometimes conservative, serves to prevent the premature announcement of discoveries that haven't been adequately verified. The history of archaeology includes numerous false alarms and misidentified natural formations that initially appeared to be artificial structures. Professional caution about underwater anomalies reflects this experience rather than conspiracy. Nevertheless, the secrecy theory persists because it addresses real frustrations with the pace of underwater exploration and the apparent reluctance of institutions to investigate anomalous discoveries. The vast unexplored areas of the ocean floor, combined with the obvious strategic and economic importance of any major archaeological discoveries, create conditions where conspiracy theories can flourish in the absence of definitive information. Recent developments in private deep-sea exploration, funded by technology billionaires and independent research organizations, may eventually bypass traditional institutional gatekeepers. If significant underwater archaeological discoveries do exist, privately funded expeditions using advanced submersibles and satellite technology might reveal them despite any official reluctance to investigate. The digital age has also created new possibilities for exposing suppressed information through leaked documents, satellite imagery analysis, and crowdsourced research that operates outside traditional academic and government channels. If evidence of Atlantis or similar lost civilizations does exist in classified archives, maintaining secrecy becomes increasingly difficult in an interconnected world where information wants to be free. Whether the guardians of secrecy are protecting earth-shaking truths about human origins or simply maintaining normal institutional caution about extraordinary claims, the theory reflects a deeper human need to believe that powerful hidden knowledge exists and that truth will eventually overcome the forces that would suppress it. In the end, the most profound secret may be not what lies hidden in classified files, but what remains undiscovered in the silent depths of the unexplored ocean. What if the greatest error in our search for Atlantis has been the assumption that it was destroyed? What if Plato's account of earthquakes and floods describes not the end of a civilization, but its withdrawal, a conscious decision by an advanced society to separate itself from a world growing too chaotic and destructive for their refined sensibilities? In the depths of speculation that surround humanity's greatest mystery, perhaps the most audacious possibility is that Atlantis still exists, hidden from surface view, but continuing to thrive in splendid isolation. The theory of a surviving Atlantis requires imagining technological capabilities that exceed our current achievements, but not beyond the realm of theoretical possibility. Advanced materials science could have enabled the construction of underwater cities protected by transparent domes, maintaining artificial atmospheres beneath the waves while drawing energy from geothermal vents or sophisticated fusion reactors. Such a civilization could have achieved complete environmental sustainability, eliminating the resource conflicts that drive surface nations toward war and destruction. Ancient texts from around the world describe encounters with mysterious beings who emerge from beneath the waters to observe or occasionally intervene in human affairs. The Mesopotamian Apkallu, depicted as fish-like creatures who brought civilization to humanity, supposedly continued to visit from their underwater realm long after the first teaching. Similarly, Celtic legends speak of the Tuatha Dé Danann, who retreated to hidden realms beneath hills and seas when newer peoples arrived, but who occasionally emerged to interact with mortals who prove worthy of their attention. Modern UFO phenomena according to some researchers, might actually represent technology from a surviving Atlantean civilization rather than extraterrestrial visitors. The USO's unidentified submerged objects, reported by naval personnel worldwide, often display capabilities that exceed known human technology: silent propulsion, rapid acceleration, and the ability to transition seamlessly between air and underwater environments. If Atlantis had developed anti-gravity or field manipulation technology, their craft would appear magical to surface dwellers, still dependent on chemical propulsion and mechanical flight. The patterns of USO sightings correlate strongly with deep ocean trenches and underwater mountain ranges where a hidden civilization might establish bases. The Puerto Rico Trench, the Mariana Trench, and the deep basins of the Atlantic Ocean have all been sites of repeated USO encounters. These locations would provide ideal conditions for concealed installations, vast depths that prevent accidental discovery, geological stability for permanent construction, and access to mineral resources and geothermal energy. Satellite anomalies detected in these regions have puzzled oceanographers and military analysts. Thermal signatures that suggest artificial heat sources, electromagnetic readings that don't match known geological phenomena, and sonar contacts that behave in ways inconsistent with marine life or known technology. While conventional explanations exist for most of these anomalies, their clustering around certain deep-sea locations creates patterns that fuel speculation about hidden installations. The psychological profile of a surviving Atlantean civilization would likely emphasize extreme selectivity in contact with surface humanity. Having witnessed or caused their own near destruction through technological hubris, they would approach our modern civilization with deep caution. Our current trajectory toward environmental destruction, nuclear warfare, and social collapse would confirm their ancient decision to withdraw from surface involvement. Contact would occur only when absolutely necessary, or when they encounter individuals who demonstrate the wisdom and restraint that their own ancestors lacked. This selective contact theory could explain the fragmentary nature of esoteric knowledge about Atlantis. Rather than complete suppression, the hidden civilization might deliberately seed certain information through chosen individuals, mystics, scientists, or visionaries who can handle advanced concepts without becoming corrupted by them. Edgar Case's detailed descriptions of Atlantean technology, channeled during deep trance states, might represent such selective information transfer rather than purely psychic phenomena. The technological capabilities required for indefinite underwater survival are not beyond theoretical possibility. Closed-loop ecological systems, demonstrated in prototype form in projects like Biosphere 2, could maintain human populations indefinitely with proper engineering. Nuclear fusion, which powers the sun and stars, could provide unlimited energy for millennia. Nanotechnology and advanced materials could create self-repairing infrastructure that would require minimal maintenance over centuries. Genetic engineering and advanced medicine could enable a hidden civilization to maintain stable populations without the large numbers necessary for surface societies. If they had achieved significant life extension, or even practical immortality, a relatively small population could maintain technological civilization for thousands of years. The absence of resource scarcity and military pressure would allow their society to focus entirely on scientific advancement, artistic achievement, and philosophical development. The ocean as role as a medium for concealment becomes more significant when considered from the perspective of advanced technology. Sound manipulation could create zones of acoustic invisibility, while electromagnetic field control could deflect sonar and other detection methods. The crushing pressure and eternal darkness of the deep ocean provide natural barriers that even our most advanced military technology can barely penetrate. Communication with surface humanity could occur through means that we might not recognize as artificial influence on marine ecosystems, manipulation of weather patterns, or even the careful placement of archaeological evidence designed to guide human development along desired paths. Ancient monuments that encode advanced astronomical and mathematical knowledge might represent such guidance, left by Atlantean observers who understand the long cycles of human civilization. The philosophical implications of a surviving Atlantis extend beyond mere technological speculation. Such a civilization would serve as humanity's shadow or reflection of what we might become if we solve our current crisis, or a warning of what we might lose if we fail. Their continued existence would make them the ultimate judges of surface humanity's worthiness to join the community of truly advanced civilizations. The question of whether Atlantis might still exist forces us to confront the limits of our own knowledge and perception. In an age when we can detect exoplanets thousands of light years away, but have explored less than 5% of our own ocean depths, the possibility that an advanced civilization could remain hidden in Earth's most inaccessible places cannot be dismissed entirely. The silence of the deep ocean might not be empty, but filled with purposes we have yet to comprehend. Whether Atlantis survives in hidden depths or remains only in human imagination, the possibility serves as a mirror for our own potential, a reminder that civilization's greatest achievements might not be conquest and exploitation, but wisdom, sustainability, and the courage to choose survival over dominance. In the margins of official records, where conventional reporting gives way to whispered accounts and classified documents hint at phenomena beyond easy explanation, a different picture of our modern world emerges, one where the boundary between myth and reality blurs in encounters that suggest we may not be alone on this planet we assume we know so well. Captain Jonathan Hayes logged the encounter in his ship's records with the careful precision of a career naval officer. But 23 years later, his voice still carries the bewilderment of that night in the Bermuda Triangle. The USS Constellation was conducting routine exercises 200 miles southeast of Florida when sonar detected multiple objects moving beneath the surface at speeds exceeding 150 knots, impossible for any known submarine technology. The objects maintained perfect formation while executing maneuvers that defied conventional understanding of underwater physics. They weren't following any propulsion principles we understood, Hayes recalled in a recent interview. No cavitation bubbles, no thermal signature, no sound except for a low-frequency hum that seemed to come from everywhere at once. When they finally rose to periscope depth, we saw lights, not the kind of illumination you'd expect from any surface vessel, but something that seemed to make the water itself glow. The official report classified the incident as equipment malfunction, but Hayes wasn't the only witness. Sonar operators on 3 separate vessels recorded identical readings, while lookouts reported seeing disc-shaped objects transition from underwater to airborne flight without any apparent difficulty. The objects displayed capabilities that exceeded both submarine and aircraft performance by orders of magnitude. Similar encounters proliferate in naval archives that have been slowly declassified over recent decades. The 2004 USS Nimitz incident, initially suppressed but later officially acknowledged, involved multiple Fi-18 fighter aircraft attempting to intercept objects that demonstrated impossible acceleration and maneuverability. What received less public attention was the preliminary sonar contact that suggested the objects had emerged from deep underwater positions before taking to the air. Dr. Richard Thorne, a marine biologist who spent 30 years conducting deep-sea research for NOAA, has documented dozens of encounters with phenomena that don't fit conventional explanations. His research vessel, Coastal, was equipped with some of the most advanced sonar and underwater photography equipment available, yet repeatedly recorded contacts that challenged everything he thought he knew about ocean life. We detect large objects, sometimes hundreds of feet in length, moving in coordinated patterns at depths where nothing that size should be able to survive, Thorne explained. The pressure alone should have crushed anything mechanical, and the objects moved in ways that violated basic principles of fluid dynamics. When we tried to track them with underwater cameras, they seemed to be aware of our surveillance, and would disappear into oceanic trenches or simply vanish from our instruments. The most unsettling encounters involved direct visual contact. During a deep-sea dive in the Puerto Rico Trench, Thorne's submersible encountered structures that appeared artificial but were unlike any known underwater installations. The construction looked organic, but showed geometric patterns too regular to be natural. There were openings that seemed designed for entry, but the scale was wrong, too large for human use, but clearly intended for something intelligent. Commercial fishermen from the North Atlantic have reported similar phenomena for decades, though their accounts rarely reach scientific literature. Captain Maria Santos, who has operated trawlers off the Grand Banks for over 20 years, describes encounters with objects that her sonar initially interpreted as whales, but which moved in formation and displayed bioluminescent patterns unlike any known marine life. They followed us for hours, Santos recounted. Perfect coordination, speeds that were impossible for whales, and lights that pulsed in sequences too complex to be random. My crew was terrified, but I was fascinated. These things were obviously intelligent, but they weren't like anything in our marine biology textbooks. The advent of increasingly sophisticated civilian marine technology has multiplied such encounters. Private yacht owners equipped with military-grade sonar and underwater cameras document phenomena that government vessels might classify, but civilian craft can share freely. Internet forums dedicated to USO encounters compile hundreds of such reports each year, creating a database of anomalous underwater activity that government agencies seem reluctant to investigate. Perhaps most intriguingly, some encounters suggest direct interaction between these unknown entities and surface humanity. Coast Guard rescue operations have reported assistance from unidentified underwater sources, mysterious lights that guide rescue vessels to survivors, or unexplained buoyancy that keeps sinking vessels afloat until help arrives. The assistance appears deliberate and intelligent, but its source remains completely unknown. John Patterson, a former oil rig supervisor in the Gulf of Mexico, described an incident that occurred during the 2010 Deepwater Horizon disaster. We were trying to contain the spill when our sonar started picking up massive objects moving beneath the oil slick. Then the leak started decreasing on its own, not from anything we were doing, but like something was actively working on it from below. The official reports credited improved containment technology, but we knew something else was involved. The pattern of these encounters suggests intelligence that is familiar with human technology, but operates according to different principles. The objects demonstrate concern for environmental protection and human safety, while maintaining careful distance from direct contact. This behavior profile matches what might be expected from a hidden terrestrial civilization that monitors surface activities without revealing itself. Satellite analysis has begun to reveal correlations between USO encounter locations and underwater geographical features that could conceal large installations. Deep ocean trenches, underwater mountain ranges, and abyssal plains all show thermal and electromagnetic anomalies that don't match known geological processes. While conventional explanations exist for most individual anomalies, their clustering around areas of frequent USO activity suggests possible connections. The encounters at the edge of human knowledge continue to accumulate in databases both classified and public, painting a picture of ocean depths that teem with intelligence we do understand and technologies that exceed our current capabilities. Whether these phenomena represent surviving Atlantean civilization, non-human intelligence, or simply the limits of human perception in Earth's most alien environment, they remind us that the familiar surface world may be only a small fraction of the intelligence that shares our planet. In the growing collection of testimonies from trained observers, in the increasing sophistication of civilian detection equipment, the edge between known and unknown continues to blur. The encounters persist, documented but unexplained, witnessed but not understood, suggesting that the greatest discoveries about our planet may come not from exploring distant worlds, but from finally comprehending the depths of the one we call home. In the tale of Atlantis, whether historical fact or philosophical allegory, humanity confronts its own reflection across the dark waters of time, a vision of what we might become, or perhaps more disturbingly, what we might already be. A civilization that Plato described as the pinnacle of human achievement, brought low by its own hubris and moral corruption, reads like a prophetic warning written specifically for our modern age of unprecedented technological power and global environmental crisis. The parallels are striking enough to make any thoughtful observer uncomfortable. Atlantis, as Plato described it, was a maritime empire that dominated global trade through technological superiority and military might. Its citizens enjoyed unprecedented prosperity, artificial control over their environment, and access to energy sources that seemed limitless. They built massive cities that reshaped natural landscapes, created transportation networks that spanned continents, and developed weapons capable of projecting power across vast distances. Modern industrial civilization has achieved all of these Atlantean characteristics and more. Our cities tower higher than any ancient architect could have imagined, while our transportation networks connect every corner of the globe in ways that would have seemed magical to Plato's contemporaries. Our energy consumption, based primarily on fossil fuels extracted from the Earth's depths, has enabled lifestyle luxuries that exceed those of any historical aristocracy. Our military technologies can deliver destruction to any point on Earth within hours. Yet according to Plato's account, these very achievements became the seeds of Atlantis' destruction. The society that began as a model of justice and cooperation gradually became corrupted by its own power. The Atlanteans started to believe that their technological capabilities freed them from the natural laws that governed other peoples. They pursued expansion and domination without considering the long-term consequences of their actions. They exploited natural resources without regard for sustainability, confident that their ingenuity could solve any problems that arose. The psychological transformation that Plato attributed to the Atlanteans, from wisdom to arrogance, from harmony with nature to domination over it, mirrors concerns that many observers raise about modern civilization. Our unprecedented ability to alter planetary systems, from atmospheric chemistry to global climate patterns, has created a sense of technological omnipotence that may be as dangerous as it is intoxicating. Climate scientists have documented changes to Earth systems that parallel the kinds of catastrophic environmental disruption that supposedly destroyed Atlantis. Rising sea levels threaten coastal cities that house hundreds of millions of people. Extreme weather events, intensified by human activities, cause destruction that rivals natural disasters. The acidification of oceans and the collapse of marine ecosystems echo the kinds of environmental breakdown that could have accompanied Atlantean civilization as final period. The moral dimension of the Atlantean allegory proves equally relevant to contemporary concerns. Plato emphasized that the Atlanteans' technological prowess was not accompanied by corresponding growth in wisdom or ethical development. They became, in his words, unable to bear their fortune and were infected with unrighteous ambition and power. This moral failure, according to Plato, was the true cause of their destruction. The natural world simply responded to their violation of cosmic justice. Modern discussions of technological ethics, from artificial intelligence and genetic engineering to nuclear weapons and environmental manipulation, grapple with the same fundamental question that Plato embedded in his Atlantean allegory. Does technological capability automatically confer the wisdom to use that capability responsibly? The answer from both ancient philosophy and contemporary experience suggests a troubling disconnect between our power to alter the world and our understanding of how those alterations will affect human flourishing over the long term. The democratic institutions that Plato described as deteriorating in Atlantis face similar challenges in our current age. The Atlantean government, he suggested, became increasingly influenced by demagogues who promised easy solutions to complex problems, while ignoring the advice of wiser but less popular voices. The citizens, seduced by prosperity and entertainment, gradually lost interest in the difficult work of governance and ethical reflection that democracy requires. Contemporary political developments, the rise of populist authoritarianism, the declining influence of expertise in public discourse, and the polarization that makes collective action increasingly difficult, seem to replay the political dysfunction that Plato associated with Atlantean decline. The tools of mass communication that should enhance democratic deliberation often seem to amplify the very tendencies toward unreflective passion and tribal thinking that ancient philosophers warned against. Perhaps most unnervingly, the Atlantean story suggests that civilizations can destroy themselves precisely through their greatest achievements. The same technologies that create unprecedented prosperity and power can, when misapplied or corrupted by short-term thinking, generate the forces that ultimately overwhelm their creators. The nuclear weapons that provide security can also provide extinction. The industrial processes that create wealth can also destabilize the planetary systems that sustain human life. The archaeological search for historical Atlantis may ultimately be less important than the civilization as function as a mirror that reflects our own possibilities and dangers. Every age that encounters Plato's story seems to find in it a reflection of their own concerns and challenges. Medieval readers saw in Atlantis a warning about pride and divine judgment. Enlightenment thinkers found themes of reason corrupted by passion. Modern environmentalists discover cautionary tales about technological hubris and ecological destruction. This continuing relevance suggests that Atlantis functions not as a specific historical narrative, but as a perennial pattern, a template that describes how human societies achieve great things and then potentially destroy themselves through the very achievements that made them great. The pattern appears throughout history: civilizations that solve fundamental challenges only to create new and more complex problems through their solutions. Yet the mirror of Atlantis also offers hope alongside its warnings. If the story reflects real patterns in human development, then understanding those patterns might enable us to achieve Atlantean capabilities while avoiding Atlantean fate. The recognition that technological power requires corresponding growth in wisdom and ethical development provides a framework for navigating our own unprecedented capabilities. The question that the Atlantean mirror poses to our age is ultimately simple but profound. Will we prove wiser than our fictional predecessors? Or are we destined to repeat their errors on a global scale? The answer lies not in the ocean depths, where archaeologists search for ancient ruins, but in the choices we make about how to use the remarkable powers that our own civilization has achieved. In the end, Atlantis may be neither lost beneath the waves nor hidden in unexplored places, but rather emerging all around us a civilization that could become either the greatest achievement in human history or the cautionary tale that warns future ages about the dangers of power without wisdom. Water remembers. In its molecular structure, in the patterns of its currents, in the vast archives of sediment it carries from mountain to sea, water preserves the history of our planet with a fidelity that exceeds human record-keeping. The oceans that may have swallowed Atlantis continue to hold their secrets in layers of mud and fossil shells, in the chemical signatures of ancient climates, and in the slow circulation patterns that connect every drop of moisture on Earth to cycles that span millennia. Scientists who study paleoclimatology, the ancient history of Earth's climate, have learned to read water's memory like a vast library written in ice cores and marine sediments. Each layer tells a story: volcanic eruptions recorded in acid spikes, asteroid impacts preserved in iridium, concentrations and the rise and fall of civilizations marked by changes in pollen-carbon isotopes and microscopic marine organisms that respond to human activity with geological precision. The deep ocean cores extracted from the Atlantic seafloor contain records that stretch back millions of years, capturing in microscopic detail the environmental conditions that existed when Plato's Atlantis supposedly flourished and fell. These cores show that the period around 9600 BCE, the date Plato gave for Atlantis' destruction, coincided with dramatic global climate changes as the last ice age ended. Sea levels rose by hundreds of feet as massive ice sheets melted. Ocean currents shifted as fresh water disrupted established circulation patterns, and coastlines around the world were redrawn with catastrophic speed. In the Black Sea, marine archaeologists have discovered direct evidence of how such changes could erase entire civilizations from human memory. When rising Mediterranean waters breached the Bosphorus around 7,500 years ago, the resulting flood was so sudden and massive that entire settlements disappeared beneath the waves within months. The underwater ruins reveal sophisticated communities that had flourished on the shores of what was then a freshwater lake, their inhabitants apparently fleeing so quickly that they left behind pottery, tools, and even the wooden frameworks of their houses. The preservation conditions in these underwater sites demonstrate water's capacity to protect as well as destroy. The anaerobic environment created by deep submersion prevents the decay that would destroy artifacts exposed to air. Wooden beams that would have rotted away on land remain intact after 7 millennia underwater. Organic materials that provide crucial evidence about ancient ways of life seeds, textiles, leather, and human remains survive in underwater sites with a completeness rarely achieved in terrestrial archaeology. This preservation principle applies to much older sites as well. If Atlantis existed during the Ice Age, when sea levels were 400 feet lower than today, its ruins would now lie in deep water, where conditions are ideal for long-term preservation. The constant temperature, high pressure, and absence of oxygen would create a natural museum where artifacts could remain essentially unchanged for 12,000 years or more. Water's memory extends beyond mere preservation of physical objects to the recording of chemical and biological signatures that can reveal human activities. Ancient copper mining, for example, leaves distinctive traces in ocean sediments as metal-bearing particles are carried by rivers to the sea. Large-scale agriculture alters the composition of organic compounds that wash into marine environments. Even population changes can be detected through shifts in the microscopic organisms that respond to human-generated nutrients and pollutants. Recent advances in marine chemistry have enabled scientists to detect human activities in ocean sediments with unprecedented sensitivity. The development of agriculture, the beginning of metallurgy, and even specific events like forest clearing or urban construction leave chemical fingerprints that persist in the geological record. If a civilization has advanced as Plato's Atlantis had existed and been destroyed, it should have left detectable traces in the ocean's chemical memory. The search for such signatures has yielded intriguing but ambiguous results. Sediment cores from the Atlantic show unusual spikes in certain metals and organic compounds around the time period when Atlantis supposedly existed, but these anomalies could result from volcanic activity, climate change, or other natural processes rather than human civilization. The challenge is distinguishing between the many natural phenomena that can create similar chemical signatures and the specific markers that would indicate advanced human technology. Ocean currents themselves preserve long-term memories of past conditions through their circulation patterns and the distribution of nutrients, heat, and chemical compounds they carry around the globe. The Gulf Stream, which transports warm water from the Caribbean to northern Europe, operates according to density differences created by temperature and salinity variations that can be disrupted by major environmental changes. The current's strength and path vary over decades and centuries in response to climate conditions, creating patterns that oceanographers can read as historical records. During the period when Atlantis allegedly existed, major disruptions to ocean circulation would have been caused by the massive influx of fresh water from melting ice sheets. These disruptions would have altered weather patterns globally, potentially creating the kinds of catastrophic conditions that could destroy maritime civilizations. The memory of these circulation changes persists in the chemical composition of deep waters and the distribution of marine organisms whose fossilized remains record the ocean conditions of their time. The tsunamis that could have accompanied Atlantis' destruction would also leave lasting signatures in the geological record. When massive waves surge across coastlines, they carry distinctive sediment loads, deep ocean materials, mixed with coastal debris and patterns that create unmistakable geological fingerprints. These tsunami deposits can be identified thousands of years after the events that created them, providing evidence of catastrophic sea level changes that could have inspired flood legends around the world. Modern climate research has revealed that the ocean-atmosphere system can undergo rapid, dramatic transitions between stable states, what scientists call tipping points, where gradual changes suddenly accelerate into catastrophic shifts. The end of the Ice Age appears to have involved several such transitions, with ocean temperatures, currents, and sea levels changing much more rapidly than previously believed possible. These discoveries make the kind of sudden catastrophe described in Atlantean legends seem more plausible from a scientific perspective. Water's capacity for memory extends even to its molecular structure, where some researchers claim that information can be stored in the hydrogen bonds between water molecules. While controversial, these theories suggest that water might preserve not just chemical and physical evidence of past events, but actual informational patterns that could, under certain conditions, be retrieved and decoded. Whether in the form of preserved artifacts, chemical signatures, or circulation patterns that still influence global climate, the oceans continue to hold whatever secrets the ancient world committed to their depths. Water's long memory persists in forms we are only beginning to understand, waiting for the development of technologies sophisticated enough to read the complete historical archive dissolved in every drop of seawater. The search for Atlantis thus becomes not just an archaeological quest, but an exercise in learning to understand the languages in which water records and preserves the history of our planet. In the patient accumulation of sediments and the slow circulation of currents that connect past and present in the molecular structure of H2O itself, the memory of water holds whatever truths the ocean depths have witnessed across the millennia of human development and loss. Standing at the edge of the 21st century, surrounded by gleaming towers of glass and steel that reshape the horizon of every major continent, connected by networks of communication that span the globe in milliseconds, commanding technologies that can alter the very chemistry of our atmosphere, we might pause to ask a question that grows more urgent with each passing year. Are we living in the new Atlantis, blessed with unprecedented power, but blind to the forces that could sweep it all away? The parallels between Plato's lost civilization and our modern world have become so pronounced that they seem less like coincidence and more like destiny unfolding according to ancient patterns. We have built cities that rival the Atlantean capital in scale and ambition, urban centers that house tens of millions of people, sustained by technology that channels resources from across the planet. Our transportation networks exceed even the most fantastic descriptions of Atlantean infrastructure, moving people and goods between continents as routinely as ancient peoples traveled between neighboring villages. The energy that powers our civilization flows from sources that would have seemed magical to any previous age. We extract power from atomic nuclei, harness the force of falling water behind massive dams, and capture solar radiation with crystal arrays that convert photons directly into electricity. Our global energy consumption exceeds the total power output available to all previous civilizations combined, enabling lifestyles for ordinary citizens that surpass the luxury of ancient emperors. Yet this unprecedented prosperity rests on foundations that show troubling signs of instability. Our coastal cities, where the majority of human beings now live, face rising sea levels that threaten to redraw the world's maps within our own lifetimes. The climate systems that sustain agriculture and fresh water supplies show increasing volatility as atmospheric Chemistry changes in response to industrial activity. The biodiversity that maintains ecological stability declines at rates that rival the great extinction events preserved in the geological record. Perhaps most ominously, our technological capabilities have begun to exceed our wisdom in applying them responsibly. We possess weapons that could end human civilization within hours, genetic technologies that could alter the fundamental nature of life itself, and artificial intelligence systems whose ultimate capabilities and intentions remain beyond our understanding or control. Like the Atlanteans whom Plato described as becoming unable to bear their fortune, we may be approaching the point where our power to reshape the world exceeds our ability to foresee the consequences of our actions. The political and social dynamics that Plato identified as symptoms of Atlantean decline appear with alarming frequency in contemporary global affairs. Democratic institutions struggle with the same tensions between popular will and expert knowledge that troubled ancient republics. Demagogues offer simple solutions to complex problems, while systematic thinkers who understand long-term consequences find their warnings ignored by populations focused on immediate concerns. The concentration of wealth and power in the hands of a technological elite mirrors the class divisions that Plato suggested contributed to Atlantean dysfunction. Those who control the most advanced technologies, from social media algorithms to financial trading systems to surveillance networks, wield influence over human behavior that exceeds the power of traditional political authority. Yet this influence operates largely outside the democratic processes that might hold it accountable to broader human interests. Environmental degradation accelerates despite widespread awareness of its long-term dangers, suggesting the same disconnect between knowledge and action that characterized Atlantean hubris. We possess unprecedented understanding of ecological systems and climate dynamics, yet continue to pursue economic and political strategies that destabilize the natural systems upon which civilization depends. The gap between what we know and what we do grows wider each year, creating conditions for the kind of systemic collapse that transformed Atlantis from earthly paradise to cautionary tale. Modern information technology has created a global nervous system that connects human consciousness across continents, enabling coordination and communication that earlier ages could barely imagine. Yet this same network has become a medium for the spread of misinformation, tribal conflict, and addictive distractions that undermine the rational deliberation democracy requires. We have built the infrastructure for global wisdom, but filled it with content that often promotes the opposite. The speed of contemporary change has accelerated beyond human evolutionary adaptation. While our ancestors had centuries or millennia to adapt to new technologies and social arrangements, we must adjust to fundamental transformations in lifestyle, environment, and social organization within single lifetimes. This acceleration creates psychological and social stresses that may exceed our species' capacity for healthy adaptation, potentially triggering the kinds of irrational responses that lead to civilizational breakdown. Yet awareness of the Atlantean pattern might itself provide the key to avoiding Atlantean fate. If Plato's story functions as a warning about the dangers of power without wisdom, then recognizing those dangers in our own situation becomes the first step toward developing the ethical and intellectual frameworks necessary to navigate unprecedented capabilities responsibly. The environmental movement, the development of international institutions for global governance, and the growing emphasis on sustainable development all represent attempts to apply wisdom to power in ways that might break the cycle of civilizational rise and fall. The question is whether these efforts can mature quickly enough to address the accelerating challenges that confront modern civilization. The technologies that threaten to overwhelm us also offer possibilities for transcending the limitations that doomed previous civilizations. Renewable energy could free us from the resource conflicts that drive nations to war. Global communication networks could enable levels of cooperation and mutual understanding that were impossible for earlier societies. Advanced computing and modeling capabilities could help us foresee the long-term consequences of our actions with unprecedented accuracy. The choice between becoming a successful Atlantis that achieves sustainability and harmony, or a failed Atlantis that destroys itself through its own achievements, may be the defining challenge of our historical moment. The outcome will depend not on our technological capabilities, which continue to grow at exponential rates, but on our ability to develop the wisdom, cooperation, and long-term thinking necessary to use those capabilities for genuinely human purposes. In this light, the search for historical Atlantis becomes less important than the effort to ensure that future archaeologists won't be searching for the ruins of our own civilization beneath the waves of whatever world we leave to them. The true Atlantis may not lie in the ocean depths, but in the reflection we see when we look honestly at ourselves and ask whether we have learned anything from the stories that previous ages preserved to warn us about the dangers of our own success. In the end, perhaps Atlantis is not a place at all, but a question of mystery that reveals more about the searchers than the searched, more about human longing than human history. For nearly 24 centuries since Plato first set stylus to wax in the Academy's sun-dappled halls, this phantom island has floated through human consciousness like a dream that refuses to fade with waking a memory that feels more real than reality itself. We have followed the trail of evidence across ocean floors and through ancient texts. From the concentric rings of the Richet structure to the underwater ruins off distant shores, from the precision of megalithic monuments to the whispered secrets of classified archives. We have traced connections between flood myths and genetic patterns, between astronomical alignments and underwater anomalies, between ancient technologies and modern mysteries. Yet after this long journey through the labyrinth of possibility, Atlantis remains what it has always been tantalizingly, just beyond the reach of definitive proof. But perhaps this elusiveness is not a failure of our search, but its greatest success. In remaining forever mysterious, Atlantis continues to serve the function that Plato may have originally intended, as a mirror that reflects our deepest hopes and fears about human civilization. Each age that encounters the story finds in it the themes most relevant to their own challenges and possibilities. The Renaissance saw moral lessons about pride and divine justice. The Enlightenment discovered rational allegories about the rise and fall of nations. The modern era finds warnings about technology, environment, and the dangers of power without wisdom. The ocean depths that may or may not conceal Atlantean ruins certainly conceal something else, the vast majority of our planet's history and geography. In our age of satellite mapping and global positioning systems, when we can navigate to any point on Earth's surface with meter-scale precision, the realization that 95% of our ocean floors remain unexplored serves as a humbling reminder of how much we still don't know about our own world. The same technology that connects every human settlement also reveals the immensity of what remains undiscovered. This unknown oceanic realm represents more than just unexplored geography. It symbolizes the mystery that persists at the heart of human existence. Despite our unprecedented scientific knowledge and technological capabilities, fundamental questions about our origins, our purpose, and our destiny remain as mysterious as they were to our ancient ancestors. We can sequence genomes and split atoms, but we cannot definitively answer whether advanced civilizations existed before recorded history, or whether we are alone in the universe, or what ultimate meaning, if any, underlies the emergence of consciousness in a cosmos that seems largely indifferent to its presence. Atlantis endures as a symbol of this irreducible mystery. Whether it existed as a historical reality or emerged purely from Plato's philosophical imagination, it represents humanity's conviction that reality contains depths and possibilities that exceed our current understanding. The continuing search for Atlantis reflects our deeper search for meaning, connection, and transcendence in a universe that often seems random and purposeless. The pattern that emerges from our exploration extends far beyond any specific claims about sunken civilizations or ancient technologies. It reveals a species that cannot help but tell itself stories about golden ages and lost wisdom, about ancestors who achieved great things and descendants who might achieve even greater ones. These stories persist not because they can be proven true, but because they express truths about human nature that transcend historical fact. We are meaning-making creatures living in a cosmos that seems to operate according to purely physical laws. We seek purpose and connection in a universe that appears to be expanding toward entropy and dissolution. We long for permanence and significance in a reality where everything we build will eventually crumble and everything we achieve will eventually be forgotten. Atlantis represents our refusal to accept this apparent meaninglessness, our insistence that human achievement can transcend the limitations of time and mortality. The technological capabilities of our current civilization have reached levels that would have seemed godlike to any previous age. Yet we remain as vulnerable as any previous generation to the forces that could sweep away everything we have built. Climate change, nuclear weapons, artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, asteroid impacts, solar flares, and a dozen other potential catastrophes could transform our interconnected global civilization into archaeological ruins as mysterious to future researchers as Atlantis is to us. This vulnerability might be the most important lesson embedded in the Atlantean myth. The story suggests that no civilization, regardless of its achievements, is permanent or guaranteed survival. The same human capabilities that enable unprecedented creation also enable unprecedented destruction. The wisdom to distinguish between these possibilities and choose creation over destruction cannot be programmed into our technologies, but must be cultivated in human consciousness itself. Perhaps the ultimate value of the Atlantis mystery lies not in solving it, but in preserving it, maintaining space for wonder and possibility in an age that increasingly reduces mystery to mere ignorance awaiting scientific explanation. The questions that Atlantis raises about human potential, about the relationship between achievement and wisdom, about the meaning of progress and the nature of loss, will remain relevant regardless of what future underwater archaeology might discover. The island that haunts time continues to float in human imagination precisely because it addresses concerns that transcend any particular historical moment. As long as humans build civilizations, we will worry about losing them. As long as we develop powerful technologies, we will wonder whether we possess the wisdom to use them responsibly. As long as we face an uncertain future, we will create stories about possible pasts that might illuminate the path ahead. In the deepest sense, we are all citizens of Atlantis, inheritors of accumulated human knowledge and achievement, blessed with capabilities our ancestors could barely imagine, yet uncertain whether we will prove worthy of our inheritance or become cautionary tales for whatever intelligences might follow us. The question is not whether Atlantis was real, but whether we will be wise enough to ensure that our own civilization becomes the kind of reality that future ages will remember with wonder rather than warning. The search continues in ocean depths and human hearts for the wisdom that could transform power into lasting achievement and achievement into genuine meaning. Whether that search leads us to discover ancient ruins beneath the waves, or simply to discover ourselves reflected in the depths of time itself, the journey remains the most important exploration our species has ever undertaken. In the silence of the deep waters and the whisper of ancient memories, Atlantis waits not as destination, but as question, not as answer, but as eternal mystery that calls us forward into whatever new chapters of human possibility lie, waiting to be written on the vast canvas of space and time. If you found yourself drawn into this journey through the depths of mystery and time, consider joining others who seek to understand the profound questions that shape our human experience. The search for truth, whether in ancient legends or modern discoveries, continues with each mind that chooses wonder over certainty and exploration over assumption.